almost 300 students from Bucharest. We have 25 public high school from Bucharest. We have the National High School Samuel von Brückenthal from Sibiu. We have 3 high schools from Iași in the northeastern part of Romania, Iași, Grigore Moisil IT Theoretical High School, Vasile Alexandri Theoretical High School, and Emil Racoviță National High School from Iași. We have Voltaire High School from Craiova in the southwestern part of Romania. We have Tihon Hadash High School from Herzliya, Israel. Herzliya, it's in the northern part of Tel Aviv in Israel. From Tel Aviv, we have Ironi Hay High School. From Haifa, in the northern part of Israel, from Haifa, we have Leo Beck Education Center. And we have, of course, our colleagues, our students from the Laude-Reut High School here in Bucharest. So once again, it's my pleasure to invite some of our friends for the welcome messages. I'll begin with His Excellency, Her Excellency, Daniela Goodman. Daniela Goodman, she's a State Secretary, Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Bucharest, from the Assistance for Development on the Educational and Cultural Component from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs from Bucharest. Daniela Goodman, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. And
good
thank
evening,
you very much.
please.
Good evening. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I would like to say hello to all my friends, old and new friends. I say hello to Ambassador Tamara Samash. It's been a while since I haven't seen you. Also, I would like to say hello to, of course, our president and founder of Laude-Reut Complex, Ms. Tova Benun Kerbis, Ambassador Saranga, of course, there, and also a lot of ambassadors, Romanian ambassadors, Ambassador Hrezeanu, whom I saw also, and of course, Mr. Professor Steinu Cercel. Thank you all, dear students and professors. Thank you all for inviting the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to this event. Actually, it's our honor to attend this 10th conference on international conference on diplomacy and global affairs. It is a pleasure for us to be there, and I would like also to highlight the fact that we are very proud of the excellent partnership that we have developed with the Laude-Reut Educational Complex over the years. I would also like to commend Madam Tova Benun-Ceris for introducing these projects to Romania, and also for the enthusiasm and perseverance on organizing this kind of event. For us is very good because it gives us the opportunity to meet with high school students and also professors, and to actually grasp from their ideas and very daring commitments that can inspire or can influence our diplomatic act. Now, diplomacy in the times of COVID-19 pandemic is indeed a very timely and suggestive title. We all know that the pandemic is testing our increasingly globalized world, including diplomacy in every corner of the planet. We have witnessed vulnerable countries affected by the virus, a surge of people in need for assistance, and we saw communities on the brink of deep poverty. Diplomats, as me, have also witnessed the cancellations of the meeting, conference, and all major events. And for us, a diplomat, the instrument of communication, meeting with each other, exchanging ideas, and making friendship is a very strong instrument that we had lost for the time being. But of course, this virtual communication is a way that we have adapted to the current situation. Also, we have witnessed the fact that countries' international institution alliances are looking to new ways to increase the efficiency of the communication by adapting to a hybrid diplomacy. Now, you all, like high school students, you have witnessed the same situation since the COVID pandemic caused profound challenges, such as the school closures, learning losses, and inequalities in terms of access to education and digital connectivity, improper water sanitation infrastructure in schools, and so on. Now, the sanitary crisis has deepened the pre-existing shortages and aggravated the already vulnerable situation in the most marginalized children and youth around the world, who are now confronted with an even greater risk of dropping out of schools. So what lessons were learned from our point of view, and what diplomacy can do next? First lesson that we have learned is the need to adapt and adjust our diplomatic methods, instruments, and communications. Then we understood that the principle of solidarity and responsibility are more important than ever, while the role of multilateralism is the key in our effort to find a global response to the pandemic challenges. There are many phases of implication, consequences of the sanitary crisis, but I would like to focus on two very important themes of the Romanian diplomacy, two main ideas that were at the forefront of our actions, and this is solidarity through education and reconfirming Romania's profile as a responsible international partner. Last year, we have made important efforts to helping our students and academics cope with the restriction brought by the pandemic. At the same time, we have focused on encouraging international academic cooperation and academic mobility, both of which remain very high on our agenda. This is firstly why we have doubled the number of our scholarships in the annual program for foreign citizens all of non-EU countries. Actually, we have managed to connect with students from 64 developing countries that were offered the possibility to study in Romania. And of course, this was a very good news for us, because with the variety of the cultural background, they plant the seeds for a lasting link with Romania and its young professionals. Secondly, in order to respond to the challenges of helping vulnerable countries affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, the Romanian Ministry of Foreign Affairs increased by 300% the budget dedicated to its international development cooperation and humanitarian assistance. We put education and youth as a flagship sector of the Romanian development assistance offered to our partner countries, starting with Eastern Europe, Western Balkans, Sub-Saharan Africa, Middle East, and small island developing states, both in the Pacific and the Atlantic area. Around 80% of the Romanian bilateral cooperation assistance has been directed to education, to scholarships, educational facilities, and trainings. These projects are very dear to me because they speak volumes about caring, about offering chances, and especially about giving the opportunity to teenagers and young adults who was less fortunate to learn and become the educated leaders of tomorrow. Thirdly, I would like also to mention what Romania did at multilateral level last year when we financed many projects in the education field on Central Sahel region, such as Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. We have interfered and helped the Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh. Well, we financed programs on education and water sanitation and hygiene for COVID-19 clusters. We helped and supported the education and youth promotion in Afghanistan with projects there and voluntary contributions. We assisted UNICEF efforts and we financed the UNICEF efforts in Grenada, for example, in the Caribbean region, as well as we have financed together with UNICEF the Humanitarian Action for Children appeal. Now, by doing that, what we wanted to be is to adequately participate in the Team Europe projects that European Union put together in order to help the vulnerable states cope not only with the COVID pandemic, but also to the challenges in their sustainable development, if we talk about health, social, economic, and humanitarian impact of the pandemic. And we thought that our niche, our flagship is youth and education. We did that also under a regional level. For example, during our Romania's ongoing presidency of the Community of Democracies, we have organized last July, for the first time ever, the Community of Democracies Youth Forum, where young people discuss civic and political participation of their generation. And I really trust that in a very short term, in the years to be, you will be the participants that will bring new ideas and new projects and proposals around the table when we discuss about community democracy around the world. What we plan to do next? The current challenges we face is to strategically look beyond the current crisis with a view to building partnership with developing countries and less developed states. This year too, education and youth remains the key thematic area of interest for Romania and its development assistance. Let's not forget that under the context of the COVID pandemic, we have witnessed, unfortunately worldwide, a significant surge in hate speech, anti-Semitism, anti-Gypsyism.
I would love to suck a dick, but I cannot go out now.
And of course, the proliferation of the conspiracy theory online. I think what we can do as states together, youth, civic society, political representative, is to make our voice heard and to really try to not only to condemn these developments, but also to propose actions that will stop the phenomenon, that will encourage other experts to speak their minds and to prevent this kind of very unfortunate developments. Now, what we can do in terms of youth and culture, for us is very simple. We consider that these two issues, two main domains, are effective means for preventing intolerance around the globe, and that we really need to put money, as the American saying is, put the money where our mouth is, in order to promote, expand, and encourage other partners to interfere and to promote projects in these two main spheres. So again, education and culture. Now, I would like to remind you that once a teenage girl like yourself, Malaya Yousafzai from Pakistan, on her speech at the UN General Assembly, said simple but very strong words: one child, one teacher, one book, one pen can really change the world. Like Malala, I also think that you, with your friends, the teenagers around the globe that are really showing interest on helping forge us diplomats, politicians, responsible for NGOs, forge a better world. You can help us through your ideas, through your actions, through your daring dreams about you would like to see the world developing in the next decades. Each and every one of you can become tomorrow the leader of the European Union, the leader of the United Nations, the president of the United Nations, or can shape the history that stands before us. So this is why I very much treasure the possibility of meeting with you today, hearing about your thoughts. And I really want to assure you that your contribution are highly appreciated and will be very valued from the Romanian Ministry of Foreign Affairs point of view. So before concluding, I would like to wish you the fruitful discussion and to thank you all for the attention, and looking forward for the Q&A session and to get to know as many as you possible that are present today on the platform. Thank you very much. Mr. Chair, the floor is yours.
A very optimistic message. Thank you very much. And let me remind to our dear friends, dear students, that we'll have the occasion to put your questions after the welcome messages. And speaking about the welcome messages, it is my pleasure to tell you that I have here in the Laude-Reut studio, TV station, I have some friends that will pass to you their messages. I'll begin with His Excellency David Saranga. He's the extraordinary and plenipotentiary ambassador of Israel here in Bucharest. From Jerusalem, we'll have Professor Eyal Ram. He's the Deputy Director General in the Israeli Ministry of Education. And we'll have here in Bucharest, in our TV studio, Tova Ben-Nun Cherbis, the president and founder of the Laude-Reut Educational Complex. We'll have, after that, 6 panels. In the first one, His Excellency David Saranga, in 5 minutes from now, he will tell us about the peace process in the Middle East, a very interesting subject today, a very interesting topic. So, Your Excellency David Saranga, you have the virtual floor in order to pass your message, your welcome message.
Thank you very much, Adrian. Tova.
I'm sorry, we cannot hear you, Ambassador.
Now it's on. Do you hear me now? Yes, good.
It's okay.
As I said, for me, the Laude-Reut School is not only a school which is very dear to me. For me, the Laude-Reut School is also a bridge between the Israeli society and the Romanian society. People usually refer to the school as the Jewish school. Yes, it's the Jewish school, but we have to take into consideration the fact that more than 80 or 90% of the students studying here are not Jewish. It has the Jewish values, but at the same time, most of the students, most of the people who are studying here are not Jewish. And this is what makes this place so unique, since it's a bridge between the Israeli society and the Romanian society, and the students who graduate the Laude-Reut School are becoming, in fact, ambassadors not only of Romania, but also ambassadors of Israel and the good relations between the two countries. As I always mention, I know the school since day one. It was my previous post here in Romania in which Tova started this amazing project, and I'm so happy to return after more than 20 years and to see how this school evolved and how important this school is. Later on, I'll speak a bit about the Abraham Accords, about the peace treaties in the Middle East, and it's a pleasure to see you all with us.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Excellency David Saranga. I'm sure that I'm not the only one. I just can't wait to hear your consideration about the Abraham Accords, Israel and Morocco. And for the moment, we'll have our friend, our colleague from Jerusalem, Eyal Ram, Deputy Director General. Eyal Ram, are you with us? Do you hear
Yes,
me?
yes, of course, I'm here. Thank you.
Excellent, Eyal. Eyal Ram is the Deputy Director General, Head of Teachers Training and Professional Development, Israeli Ministry of Education. The floor is yours, Eyal. Hello.
Thank you. Honored guest, hello and good afternoon. Shalom. I want to tell you that we are investing great efforts and resources to strengthen ties between the State of Israel and Jewish people in the diaspora. Our motive is driven from our strong belief in the brotherhood and the unity of Jewish people. We at the Israeli Ministry of Education have set two goals and two directions. One direction is that Jewish children and teachers in the diaspora should feel a sense of attachment to the State of Israel, the Jewish people and its heritage. That's why, that's why we are training Jewish teachers in Israel colleges from many countries in 4 different languages. The second direction is that the students and teachers of Israeli education system should learn about the Jewish people in the diaspora, their life, their beauty, their challenges, as well as be aware of the importance of mutual responsibility. These two goals guided us when creating and promoting our work plan. We attach great importance in maintaining contacts between schools in Israel and Jewish schools around the world, in which teachers and students share experiences and conduct cooperative learning through digital platforms. But it's not just about connecting Jews. In the last Parashat HaShavua, the Jewish ritual of reading the Bible, we read about Yitro, Jethro. After leaving Egypt and before the 10 Commandments, Moses met Jethro, who was not a Jew, of course, and he seeks for his good advices from the fields of management and establishing court of justice. We need collaboration and learning from each other, much more, especially in the level of teachers and principals. In these challenging days during the COVID-19 pandemic, we have witnessed the vitality of teacher profession. We experience creative and ambitious teachers who had moved almost in a blink of an eye to remote learning, and they did it very well despite of all the challenges. We all are aware of the fact that the model of remote learning within each country and between countries has the important role of shaping education in the future. The State of Israel was among the first countries in the world to move to remote learning. It was based on the experience we had in digital courses for teachers. Around 40% of the teachers started last year before the corona to have a digital professional development. And as we saw on TALIS 2018, the OECD survey on teachers, Israel did the biggest jump between 2013 to 2018 in teachers using computers for teaching. In the last year, we needed all schools and teachers to be trained and focusing on techno-pedagogical and social-emotional issues. We look forward to our cooperation, collaborative learning with schools around the world. I am therefore very glad to be a partner of such a wonderful endeavor. Thank you very much.
Eyal, wonderful speech, very nice words from Jerusalem. And now from Jerusalem to Bucharest, back to Bucharest in order to hear Tova Ben Noncherbis, the president and founder of the Laude-Reut Educational Complex. Tova, we are here in order to hear your welcome message, please.
Thank you, Adrian. Good afternoon, Your Excellencies. This is Daniela Dittman, Secretary of State for Interinstitutional Affairs in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, ambassadors and diplomats, members of the Laude-Reut Board of Trustees, and our mentors of diplomatic studies, Mr. Adrian Choroianu, Mrs. Duminica Orbescu, Mr. Emil Porozianu, Mr. Lupe Culescu, Mr. Sorintan Michalake, Mr. Lazar Pomanescu. Ambassador David Saranga, Honorary President of the Laude-Reut Board of Trustees, Mr. Eyal Ram, Deputy Director General, Head of Teachers Training and Professional Development, Israeli Ministry of Education. Senator Professor Dr. Adrian Churchill, former Director of the National Institute for Infectious Disease, Professor Dr. Matei Bash. Mr. Jonathan Davis, Vice President, External Relations, Head of the Rafael Recanati International School, Laude School for Government, Strategy and Diplomacy, IBC Herzliya, Israel. Dear students, teachers, guests and friends, shalom and welcome. The Laude-Reut International Conference on Diplomacy and Global Affairs, the Ambassador, has reached its 10th edition this year. And after the first session online taking place in November 2020, chaired by Her Excellency Luminița Urubescu, the Romanian ambassador to the European Union, and attended by almost 300 young diplomats of age 14 to 17 from Romania and Israel. Here we are today, continuing our diplomatic journey in times of the COVID-19 pandemics, thus establishing new academic connections and reacting further into education. Laude-Reut expressed gratitude and honor for the long-standing academic partnership of 15 years with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, sending appreciations to Minister Bogdana Orescu and saluting again Mrs. Daniela Gitman, chair of this amazing edition, in His Excellency Ambassador Adrian Ciorianu, former permanent delegate of Romania to UNESCO and Minister of Foreign Affairs, historian and professor who is eager to introduce the diplomats of tomorrow into diplomacy of the past, because no great future can come from ignorance of the past. Mr. Ciorianu will introduce to the students, all your excellencies, great supporters of our diplomacy courses and mentors for years as Laude-Reut Board of Trustees members, showing us more and more the impact of diplomacy in all life sectors and daily existence. Thankfulness for all the soul and dedication put into our diplomatic initiative by our esteemed ambassadors and mentors. We extend gratitude to Mr. Eyal Ram, partner for Laude-Reut Excellence in Education, which brings amazing contribution to the future professional development of the Laude-Reut students. Also from Israel, here present today is our beloved friend and supporter, Jonathan Davids, Vice President of IDC Herzliya, whom I thank deeply for taking care of the Romanian community of students growing there. With IDC Herzliya and the World Zionist Organization, we share inspirational academic partnership. For so long, we could call them family. An amazing guest today among us is Senator Professor Dr. Adrian Churchill, who has made time to share to the young generation the health and safety issues in these difficult times we are navigating due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you deeply for your time and responsibility. We take great pride in 10 years of effective collaboration with the Bucharest School Inspectorate. I'm overjoyed that so many schools in Bucharest are here present today, and also 3 schools from Iași, 1 from Craiova, and 1 from Sibiu, along with 3 from Israel. Tel Aviv, Haifa, and Herzliya, all willing to learn the Laude-Reut values closely. As a large and good family, generosity is one of the values we teach and learn hand to hand with tolerance and multiculturalism. Therefore, I'm delighted to announce, and I would like to emphasize to you, the 2 scholarships offered by our Israeli ambassador, David Saranga, to which you can apply no later than 28 February. This is the first session of Today Ambassador this year, soon to be followed in March by a public speaking contest on diplomacy topics in the good tradition of our face-to-face event carried out before the pandemic. Usually, this contest is addressed to the Laude-Reut students, but this time we invite all schools here to participate with a video speech on a given country to represent as future ambassadors, and maybe best ones win. The speeches will be analyzed by a jury composed of our public speaking and diplomacy teachers, and on the March session, we will award the best three for high school and the best three for the 8th graders. Details will be sent to you shortly after the event today. Dear students, we are challenging you, but I am hopeful you will meet the challenge and live up to it. You have an amazing chance now to interact with personalities of great knowledge and experience. Therefore, be active, be present, and be confident. The Today Ambassadors Conference will be concluded in March with diplomas for your educational portfolio signed by the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Ambassador David Saranga, the Laude-Reut Board of Trustees, Honorary President, and Digital Diplomacy Teacher. With all this being said, I wish everyone health and peace. Thank you very much. Enjoy the current session and do not forget to ask questions. Thank you.
Thank you, excellent. Thank you very much, Tova Ben Kerbis. Dear students, don't forget to prepare your questions, and allow me, Tova, to recall one of your ideas. No great future can come from ignorance of the past. So I'll invite our friends, His Excellency David Saranga, you will speak about a very interesting present based on a certain past, it's clear. So our first panel, dear colleagues, dear students, the peace process in the Middle East, the Abraham Accords and the Israel and Morocco normalization agreement. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much again, Adrian. When we are talking about the Abraham Accords, we are referring to the accords which Israel signed with United Arab Emirates, with Bahrain, and also the peace accord which Israel signed with Morocco. Now, people usually are asking, or they are saying, we signed peace accords after having wars, but we had no wars with United Arab Emirates or with Bahrain or with Morocco. But in the Middle East, things look different. Since Israel was established, no normalization took place in the Middle East except the peace treaties with Egypt and with Jordan. And why it's different, these peace accords are different than the previous ones, is the fact that these accords are changing the paradigm of the peace process in the Middle East. In the past, the paradigm was, first we have to solve the conflict between the Israelis and the Palestinians, and then later on, the other Arab countries will join the train of peace and will start a new era of diplomatic relations, of peace with Israel. And all of a sudden, thanks to the American administration, all of a sudden the paradigm has changed. Today, no longer first let's solve the problem with the Palestinians and then wait to the other Arab countries to join us. Today it's the other way around. What we see today is that the Arab world, countries in the Arab world, are joining the peace train, are joining negotiations, are signing peace accords with Israel, when our hope is that the Palestinians will join this trend, the Palestinians will join the train of peace and will start once again to negotiate with Israel. Now, I want to make it clear, the Abraham Accords, which are important and we are going to talk about them, are not coming instead of the peace with the Palestinians. the peace with the Palestinians, or the process with the Palestinians, the peace process with the Palestinians should continue, since it's the interest of both sides to solve it. A peace accord with a United Arab Emirates or with Bahrain or with Morocco will not solve the problem and the conflict with the Palestinians. So therefore, we still have to negotiate with the Palestinians. We still have to find ways to solve the dispute, the territorial dispute between the two entities. But still, we think that it will be easier to do it while other Arab countries are signing or having diplomatic relations with Israel. So this is a core element that we have to understand, that it's not at the expense of the Palestinians. It's something that can help the Palestinians to join the negotiations and to join the train of peace. Why United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, but especially when we're talking about these two, why did they sign peace agreements with Israel? And I think there are two main reasons which we should take into consideration, two or maybe three. The first one is the fact that they understood that for prosperity in the region and for the well-being of their own citizens, they should have normal relations with Israel. And Israel is not just another country in the Middle East. Israel is not just another country in the world. Even though that we are small, very small, half the size when it comes to population, half the size of Romania, and when it comes to the territory, I think it's around 10 to 15% of the territory of Romania. But still, Israel has an added value. Israel has an added value when it comes to many fields. It's true when it comes to technology. It's very true when it comes to innovation, when it comes to medical research, when it comes to agriculture, and so on and so forth. And if we take only these categories which I mentioned, agriculture, medical research, innovation, technology, cyber, these are fields in which the countries in our region, and especially countries in the Gulf, want to cooperate with Israel. And the fact that the relations now are open, are not discrete like they were used to be before, it means that it will be a huge boost to the economy of both countries. Just to show you how important are these agreements, in the first 5 months, in the first 4 months, September, October, November, December, in the first 4 months of peace between Israel and the United Arab Emirates, the volume of trade between the two countries was around €250 million, 250 million euros. And this is only in the first 4 months of the agreement, first, and second, before all other agreements were signed, in commercial agreements. Another thing which characterizes the peace agreement which we signed with these countries is the fact that here we are talking about peace, which is a warm peace, unlike the cold peace which we had and still have with Egypt or with Jordan. Here, both sides are eager to promote the relations, they are eager even to show the friendship between the two countries. And you know, one of the nice things to see was how many Israelis, I mean, thousands or tens of thousands of Israelis were visiting United Arab Emirates, and still thousands more are waiting to visit Morocco and Bahrain. And it only shows that there is a goodwill on both sides to promote these relations. The last and not least, and I mentioned it before, but we have also to see also what are the strategic dimensions of these peace agreements. It's not a secret that the main threat over Israel in the last years, the main threat is Iran. The Iranian regime, with its nuclear aspirations on the one hand and with its involvement in terror on the other hand, the Iranian regime in the Middle East is a threat over Israel, but not only over Israel, it's also a threat when we are speaking about the moderate Arab countries, and especially the moderate Arab countries in the Gulf. And everyone understands it. Everyone understands it, and I'm sure that the authorities in Bahrain or in the United Arab Emirates had it in mind, even if these are not topics which both sides are speaking about openly. We all understand, or everyone understands, that today in the Middle East, we have on the one hand the Shia countries, which usually symbolizes the extremists in the region. And on the other hand, we are having the moderate countries in which these two sides, these two groups are fighting. But still, everyone understands in the Middle East, especially when we are speaking about the countries in the Gulf, the importance of being aligned with Israel, the importance of Israel in balancing and when it comes to security. So if I summarize the reasons for the agreements which were signed between Israel and the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and with Morocco, first we see the economic dimension, which is important. Second, we see the added value which Israel has for the prosperity of the countries, and through cooperation between Israel and the relevant countries, the region can be a more prosperous region. And the last dimension, which is not less important, is the strategic relations between the countries, and the influence that this kind of relations can have over regional trends. And as I mentioned, we don't forget the problem of the Palestinians, the conflict with the Palestinians, which is our duty to solve it, but it's not only our duty. We need also the Palestinians to agree to negotiations with Israel. We want to see the Palestinians, and hopefully now with the Biden administration, it will help them coming to the table of negotiations, because Israel is willing to negotiate with the Palestinians, and we understand that it's also it's a mutual responsibility of both sides to solve it. I'd be happy to take some questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, please, dear students, be ready to put your question to David Saranga. A very important topic. We already have one question, please. Please, the question. Please raise your hand, dear students. Let me remind you that David Saranga spoke about the reasons in that peace process between Israel and the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain and Morocco. A very interesting idea, warm peace with some countries versus cold peace with Egypt or Jordan. And finally, a very important and delicate topic, relations with Iran. So we have some question, I suppose. Please tell me the name, Teodora, Maria.
Yes, so my question would be, during the pandemic,
Please introduce yourself, Teodora Maria. I don't see your name your family name?
It's Ciobanu.
Please, Teodora Maria Ciobanu.
During the pandemic, we, the students, attend online classes, and there's a mixture of plus and minus. How is virtual diplomacy?
Interesting. Thank you. David Saranga, or probably Daniela Goodman, if you want to respond to the same question. Eyal Ram, he is still with us. Tova, it's your student, I suppose.
Yes.
Okay, David, how is the virtual diplomacy?
I don't like it. I don't like it.
You don't like it? Why?
I don't like it. I don't like it since the fact that I don't like it doesn't mean that we don't do it.
Absolutely.
But diplomacy, it's all about contacts with people.
Direct contact.
Only direct contacts. And since the corona started, we can see that the number of meetings, the number of events, the number of cultural events, the number was reduced. And yes, we still can do diplomacy. We can do diplomacy via Zoom. We can do conferences like we're doing now via Zoom, but it's not the same. So therefore, and I always say that the nice part of diplomacy is when you meet people, when you talk to them, when you have events, when you are inviting people, when people are coming to your house, to your residence, and to the embassy. So answering your question, first, I don't like it. Second, since I don't like it, I still have to do it, but we are doing it. But the important thing is that throughout the last year, one of the things that we as diplomats had to do is to reinvent ourselves every day again and again. And it's not something easy. It's not something easy to come every day and to think about different ways to be relevant when the entire world is concentrated on the COVID and on the pandemic. And our embassy brings only some elements, and I think that also Daniela Bittman mentioned it. One of the things that we found relevant to the public, especially when we are talking about public diplomacy and how to be relevant in times of Corona, is that we connected ourselves with social local issues, with social issues here in Romania, and we tried to find ways how to make Israel relevant to these social issues in Romania and to connect between the added value that Israel has and the social issues.
Yeah, thank you, David. A very interesting idea to reinvent ourselves. Daniela Goodman, Your Excellency, State Secretary from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Daniela, please. The virtual diplomacy. What's your opinion on that?
Mute. Okay. I was trying to unmute my microphone. Of course, as a diplomat, I will join Ambassador Saranga by saying that we don't like either the fact that we cannot connect, because the most important thing in diplomacy, as you know for sure, Mr. Ciorianu, is that bridges, friendships, diplomacy around the table is important, but also what we discuss after closing the official meeting is also important. So it is the way we talk to our friends, the way we evaluate a message. It's important to have the physical perspective of it, the connection, the handshake, and everything. So for me, it's important to have it this way. But this being said, we cannot still say that the virtual communication was not okay. First of all, it was a matter of adaptation. Secondly, it spared a lot of time to us among the international travels. And for me, mostly when I talk with the parliament and the parliamentary groups in Romania, because now with the VDC it's easier and it saves me a lot of energy and time. Secondly, thirdly, we discussed that when we talk about cultural events, of course, it's nice to go to theaters or to concerts, and so on. But when we managed to adapt our cultural products to a virtual followers, we understood that our message could reach as many people as possible, maybe more than a group can be accommodated in one concert room on one theater. So there are advantages and disadvantages. I personally think that we need to connect physically. For example, we will have the Expo Dubai, since Ambassador Saranga spoke about the relaunching or the establishment of the diplomatic relations with the Emirates. Now it's a big event that is going to open in October, the International Exhibition Expo Dubai 2020. They are talking now about the possibility, if the case, to organize virtual tour of an exhibition. Now, what a pity, what a loss. I mean, when you want to present your culture, your high-tech in projects, your innovations and your creativity, when you talk about sustainable development, for the followers not to be able to be in the field and to visit to make a virtual tour is definitely a loss. But all in all, I would say that there are the advantages and disadvantages. For us diplomats, as for you teenagers, I think the physical contacts, the meetings in person are very important, much more important than this virtual meeting. So thank you.
Thank you, Daniela Goodman. Of course, there are advantages and disadvantages, as you said. So it was Daniela Goodman, State Secretary, Romanian Minister of Foreign Affairs. Now we have a short question from Guy Aaron, from Israel, I suppose. Guy Aaron, a student. Do you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hello, please, Aaron, please.
Hello. It is a known fact that the relationship between Israel and the Arab world hasn't been the greatest since the Independence War in 1948. This agreement indicates a shift in that relationship, possibly beginning a new era of warm and open relations between Israel and the Arab world. What are the reactions in Europe to these accords? Also, do you think there are any downsides to these accords? Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. I suppose, David, it's for you. Tova, if you want if you have an answer. David, please.
The camera. Usually Europe criticizes whatever Israel is doing. No matter what Israel is doing, Europe is criticizing us. I must say that when it comes to the Abraham Accords, Europe received it and embraced it warmly. Only good things we heard from our colleagues in Europe. Not only that, also the European Union in Brussels also embraced the accord. One of our goals this year, I'm talking about the Israeli Foreign Service, is to find ways in which we can do a trilateral events between one of the Gulf countries, Israel, and one of the European countries. And the thought behind it is to show also Europe, in this case, the advantages of the peace accords between Israel and the Gulf countries. But not only that, I think that there are also a lot of opportunities in this trilateral cooperation. And this is what we want to, this is one of the things that we want to explore. Downsides of this of these accords, I don't think so. I can't even think of a downside of a peace accord between the two sides. There are people in Israel, few, not many, who are criticizing they're not criticizing the accords. They are in favor of the accords, but they say that the price which Israel had to pay is to agree that the United States will sell F-35 to the United Arab Emirates. The answer, I think, it was a big dispute in Israel, but I think that the answer now, when we are looking at it in a retrospective, is very simple. The American administration wanted to sell F-35 to the United Arab Emirates. They would have sold it anyhow. So I think that today what we see is that the reason Israel and the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain sign agreements, these are peace accords, is because of mutual interest that both sides have. But coming again to your question, downsides, I cannot think of a downside.
Okay, thank you, David. Thank you, David Saranga. Dear friends, dear students, we have many questions, but we'll keep them for the next half an hour, because now we'll pass to the second panel. The health and safety crisis in the COVID-19 pandemics, and we'll have the pleasure to have as a keynote speaker from our students. We pass to Professor Adrian Străinu-Cercel. He's medicine doctor from the National Institute for Infection Diseases, Professor Matei Balș. Professor Străinu-Cercel, good evening. Good evening, Professor. Do you hear me?
Hello to everybody. Hello, Your Excellency. I am pleased to be here with you this evening, and of course with the students, because I am a professor in infectious diseases, and you know, infectious disease might be contagious from time to time. And we just have an example. This pandemic is induced by a new coronavirus named SARS-CoV-2, and this is not good. This is not good. Why? Because till now, I have here the figures. We registered more than 107 million people infected by this virus. And from those, 2.3 million people already died. So it's a huge problem in this very moment. And of course, we have to be very clear. The pandemic is an infection which are spread around the planet. In local territory, like in a country, we have epidemics. So in Romania, we have an epidemic with the virus. Worldwide, we have pandemics. And if I'm looking what the figures show right now, so it's that in Italy, in the last 24 hours, they registered more than 13,000 new cases and more than 400 deaths. In Spain, more than 29,000 people have been new diagnoses to this virus infections and 432 died. In Germany, something like 30,000. In France, more than 23,000. In Great Britain, more than 20,000, and so on. So the situation is really critical in this very moment. And fortunately, in this very moment, in the territorial area, we registered only something 2,700 new cases per day around, which is no bad. But we have another problem, that the strain from Great Britain came also in Romania. So we are looking to see if new cases and the new speed, the speed of the virus will come up. Let's hope that God will bless us and something like this will not going to happen. But what the problem with this virus? This virus, it's a virus which belongs to a family of viruses, coronavirus. It's a very small one. And to be able to replicate, he has to penetrate in our cells. As soon as the virus penetrates in our cells, has the possibility to multiply themselves and then to go out and then to spread throughout the droplets that we spit as soon as we speak or do something like this. When we talk, the virus left our mouth with 7 meters per second. So it's the reason why everybody claims that we have to maintain a certain distance between us to not be able to give the possibility to the virus to get us. So in such context, what we can do? First of all, we can cover our nose, which is the main important route of transmission of the virus, and mouth. With what? Of course, with a mask. So we have to use this mask as soon as we left our house. We go to the school, we participate during the hours, we have to use this mask because this mask protects us. Otherwise, we are eager to receive the virus. And unfortunately, we don't know exactly if we took this virus because many patients or many infected persons do not develop symptoms. They remain asymptomatic, no symptoms, zero symptoms, but they spread the virus. And of course, they may contaminate the people around them. And when I'm looking what we have around us, we have our parents, we have the grandparents, and the grandparents are at highest risk to develop severe forms of diseases. So it's preferable to use such instrument of protection and to do not be contaminated and to be able to spread nearby, instead of bringing the virus home and infect somebody, which is very important for you. And the problem is, did we have any experience previously with this kind of pandemics? Yes, we have, because we know very well the pandemics with influenza Spanish virus during 1918, 1920. So from this letter of the history, we learned that the pandemic wave remained something like 2 to 3 years. It's the reason why we should not stop our protection measure as soon as we'll be vaccinated, because right now we have a vaccine and we have the possibility to do this. But we have to maintain this modality of protection a longer time. So it's not very complicated to take decision during a pandemic when you know what is your germs which might infect you and you might spread the virus. So in such context, what we have in our portfolio, first of all, we have to wash our hands. We do not have to cough in our hands, because as soon as we cough in our hands, the hand is contaminated. It's not infected, it's contaminated. But when you shake hands with somebody else, you just give what you have on your hands, the content of your hands, and you contaminate the people nearby. Then we have some gesture, for instance, to put the fingers on the nose, yeah, and you just put the virus at the area where he's supposed to be, where he likes to be, in the nose. In the nose, it's a mucosa, of course, and the cells has a specific receptor, which give the possibility to the virus to penetrate our cells and to start the replication. As soon as the virus starts the replication, it induces a local irritation, which is our reflex, is to sneeze. So in such context, we spread the virus around us, absolutely for sure. And of course, we will contaminate the area around us, the table, the glass, whatever. And as soon as another person comes and touch the area, might be contaminated the same, and of course, might become an infected person, and to develop a moderate person, or a moderate disease, a severe disease, or a critical disease. The critical disease represents the stage in which the patient is supposed to be admitted in the ICU, in the intensive care unit. And here in intensive care unit, they probably saw on the TV, they receive a huge ball with oxygen, yeah, or they're intubated. So it's not an easy infection, and of course, it's not an infection which pass by like this. Because after that you develop these infections, you will remain with some problems in respiration. And many of our patients who develop severe infections remain connected with an apparatus to give more oxygen, an extra oxygen. So they go home with such machines, small machine, which concentrate the oxygen around and give them a surplus of oxygen. This is the minor thing, because otherwise we have to keep in mind the fact that the virus goes and affects our vessel, the small vessel. In pathology, this is named vasculitis, general vasculitis. What does vasculitis may generate? We saw that they may generate a rash, an eruption, a skin eruption, yeah? Which is not easy to treat. They may penetrate the brain, the nervous system and induce encephalitis. Yeah, and the people may develop a lot of critical situation and even to go to suicide. So in such a context, you may see with your proper eyes and ears that it's a severe problem. What we get more, this virus may affect the heart, induce myocarditis, but generally speaking, it affects all the muscles. And if you discuss with people who's close by throughout this kind of infection, they mentioned constantly they induce a severe fatigue and the muscle decrease in the mass. So they lose mass, muscular mass. So you see that what we're going to do right now. Right now, what we have to do? First of all, we have to go and vaccinate. And I know very well that in Israel, it's a very good program of vaccination and a lot of people have been already vaccinated. The vaccine is very good. Which is this vaccine? This vaccine is something that we do to the body, and the body has the possibility to develop their own inside arms, named antibodies. Yeah? How does function? Well, the researcher figured out that it's not a question to take the whole virus, to boil the virus, if I may say like this, and introduce the virus, a dead virus. This question is to take only the small part which induce the synthesis of a specific protein that appear at the level of the surface of the virus. And this name, everybody knows right now, the spike protein. This spike protein has the capability to induce in our organism the synthesis of specific antibodies, yeah, which fix with this antigen and neutralize the virus. How does it happen properly? Because it's simple, okay, I will get the gene, yeah, I have to introduce in something, and the something are represented by nanoparticles of lipids. When we do this, our cells which are responsible with the security in our organism, named macrophage, pick up this molecule, elaborate the messenger RNA, which spread the message, this information, goes to the ribosomes. The ribosomes make the synthesis of the protein, and this spike protein then it's put it nearby at the surface of the macrophage, near a such named human leukocyte antigen. This human leukocyte antigen of class 2 is specific for the cells which are involved in the immunological process. But at the same time, you have a phone, like a mobile phone, to the T lymphocyte, which is a helper lymphocyte. And this lymphocyte came and make a joint venture with the macrophage, pick up the protein, the spike protein from this level, yeah, and give this specific protein to the lymphocyte B. And this lymphocyte B is the cells which synthesize practically the antibody. Each antibody is specific for this spike molecule. Right now, we have a lot of discussion. Is the vaccine is still useful in the context in which some mutations appear in circulation? In this very moment, when we talk right now, we know for sure that this vaccine is protective against this kind of small modification. But if a huge modification in spike protein would appear, then probably we have to change the vaccine. What lesson give us these mutations? Those mutations tell us that we have to move very fast because we have to don't give the possibility to the virus to spread and to have errors of replication, because those mutations do not represent something else than error of replication. And some error of replication may remain in nature and to be transmitted. And generally speaking, such mutation develop new strategies in developing diseases. So we have to vaccinate, we have to wear masks to protect ourselves, we have to wash properly our hands, and from this point of view, I think that we'll be safe for a long period of time. The question that we have right now is for how long this antibody will remain in our bodies. For how long is necessary, because inside our organism and behind the system, we have some memory cells which memorize this context. And when we came in contact with the virus, these cells wake up, and start to resynthesize new quantities of antibody. So it's something that we know in this very moment, that we like to share with you, and to wish you good luck in the vaccination campaign and keep you healthy. If you have questions, I'm here with you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Professor. So it was Professor Adrian Străinu-Cercel. He spoke about the safety crisis in the COVID-19 pandemics. Please, I want to hear your questions, dear students. We have some raised hands, I hope. Don't hesitate, dear friends, dear students. I know it's quite a delicate topic, a scientific one, but it's surely influenced our diplomacy all over the world. So if you have any question for Professor Străinu-Cercel, it's the time to raise your hand. Yeah, please, it's Robert Giamat. Robert, please.
Yes, so as we know, there is already a new mutation to the virus coming from Great Britain. Does this new mutation put the vaccine that we have nowadays already in danger?
Thank you, Robert. Professor Străinu-Cercel. Did you hear, Professor?
I request you to be unmuted. I was on mute. Well, in this very moment, it's not a danger. And these vaccines remain safe, and they will cover against the infections with new virus from UK and even from South Africa and Brazil. So in this very moment, we are not at risk. We are at risk to not have the vaccine, the necessary amount of vaccine to be able to vaccinate. But from other point of view, the vaccine is okay.
Answer. Good news, I'll say. Is there another question from Mihai? Radu Mihai, please, Mihai.
Okay, so my question is about how do the vaccines compare one to each other? I mean, which one is the best? The one from Pfizer, the one from Moderna, the one from AstraZeneca, or the Sputnik? Because these are the 5th most used vaccines right now.
Yeah, an interesting question, tricky one. The best vaccine is the vaccine that you have, and you use it. Generally speaking, we started also in Romania with BioNTech, Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine, which is a messenger RNA vaccine, and the vaccine is very good. Then with the vaccine from Moderna, also made it on the same type of methods with messenger RNA, very good vaccines. And when you have to compare the vaccine, you have to look to the efficacy. And when you have to look at the efficacy, for instance, in these two situations that I mentioned previously, Pfizer and BioNTech and Moderna, the efficacy is something like 95%. 95% means that from 100 people vaccinated, 95 will develop antibodies with a protective level. And probably 5% of the people will not develop such amount of antibodies. But right now we have another strategy, and probably you heard about Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which is also very good, but we have a specific limitation due to the modality of the trials that have been elaborated previously at the moment of the registration. And here the efficacy is a bit lower, but also it's a very good vaccine because introduce an adenovirus, yeah, which is modified, genetically modified, and give the same possibility to express the small protein which is responsible for our protection. So if you wish to look carefully to those things, you look to the toxicity and to efficacy, and then you have your own answer.
Question from Eva. Eva, Tatu Eva. Eva, do you hear me?
My name is Tatu Eva, and I'm a student at the Federico Garcia Lorca School in Bucharest. What are some extra safety measures that students can take, students that are going to school in person, in order to avoid getting infected with COVID, apart from the usual restrictions and recommendations? Thank you.
Thank you. Professor?
Yeah, first of all, I will start with vaccination. And you need to have a specific time at your disposition, like 1 month, because you have to administrate in the moment 2 dosage at the interval of 21 days. And till you have this possibility to vaccinate it, you have to wear mask, and the mask have to protect your nose and mouth. It's the most secure thing that you can do in this very moment. And of course, to maintain a certain distance from your colleagues, yeah, and certainly you'll not discuss like that, yeah, nearby. So from a distance.
Thing for Professor Străinu Cercel from Israel, Kineret Diners. Kineret?
Hi, yes.
Please.
Hi.
Hi.
Please.
Okay, so my question is, what do diplomats do in order to bring and promote the vaccines to Romania?
Sorry? I didn't get it. What?
What do the diplomats do in order to bring the vaccines, and promote them?
Well, at the level of EU, European Union has a lot of discussions, and the Commission decided to give a vaccine according to the number of population. So from this point of view, was a fair distribution of the vaccine. And due to the fact that the Romanian population is something like 19 million people on the floor, we receive an important quantity of vaccine. And we've been able to be right now on the 4th place in Europe from the point of view of vaccination. So we are lucky from this point of view, and I'm one of the guys, the 4th people in Romania vaccinated with this type of vaccine.
Thank you. Thank you. We have plenty of questions. Unfortunately, we are short on time for our debate, and we'll have, dear students, we'll have in a couple of minutes, we'll have many Romanian ambassadors who can take your questions. But before inviting,
quite answer to them.
Please, Professor.
Send the question to me. You may send the questions to me, and
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah? Our students can send their questions for Professor Străinu Cercel. Thank you very much, Professor Străinu Cercel. And in a couple of minutes, we'll have His Excellency Sorin Dan Mihalache, former Romanian ambassador to London in England. Now he's the ambassador, the Romanian ambassador in the Cyprus Republic. But dear friends, before that, allow me to give you, for our students especially, to give you some ideas about the history of diplomacy. I'll start with a definition. What is diplomacy? And as a professor of history, I'm a professor of history, first of all, according to the Encyclopedia Britannica, diplomacy is the method of influencing the decisions and behavior of foreign governments and peoples through dialogue, negotiation, and other peaceful measures. The first reason and the first purpose of diplomacy is to avoid, whenever possible, war or violence among communities, peoples, or states. The term diplomacy is derived from the ancient Greek word diploma, composed by diplo. Diplo means folded in two. Diplo and ma meaning an object like a piece of paper, for instance. So the folded paper, the folded document, such as a permit to travel, for instance, conferred the kind of privilege to the owner and the term diploma came to denote documents or diplomatic documents. So the first purpose of diplomacy is to avoid war. The second purpose of diplomacy is to strengthen the state or the nation or the organization it serves by advancing some interest in relation to other states, nation, or organizations. Allow me to tell you some flashpoints in the history of diplomacy. Just imagine that according to some religious, I repeat, religious scholars, the first diplomats were the angels, those divine messengers from heaven to earth, which appear in all cultures and in all religions. But what we know for sure is that the prehistoric tribes used to negotiate, for instance, marriages or some rules on trade or hunting. Messengers were sent and they had a kind of sacred position. They usually carried some emblem or insignia, such as a special kind of stick, as they were, and they were received with ceremonials and rituals. Some records of treaties between Mesopotamian city-states date from about 2800 before the Common Era. Thereafter, the Akkadian, it means the Babylonian language, the Akkadian language became the first diplomatic language serving in the Middle East until it was replaced by Aramaic. I'll pass to the, let's say, the classical system of the international relations, a system which began in ancient Greece. The earliest evidence of Greek diplomacy can be found in its literature. As you know, for instance, Iliad and Odyssey by Homer. In the Roman world, the Roman Republic, and later in the Roman Empire, diplomatic envoys or messengers were sent abroad with written instruction from the government. That kind of messenger was called a nuncius or nuncio in English. For larger responsibilities, the Romans organized a legatio, an embassy with 10 or even 11 or 12 legati. Legati means ambassadors. But the first professional diplomats, Tova and dear friends, dear students, the first empire which produced the first professional diplomats was the Byzantine Empire. They also had written instruction and were obliged to be polite and to speak with wisdom. In the same time, in the western part of Europe, the Roman Catholic Church had a very active diplomacy. Popes, for instance, serves as arbiters, and the papal legates served as peacemakers. Please, a very interesting detail. At the end of the 12th century, the term ambassador appeared initially in Italy. He is derived from the Latin term ambactiare. Ambactiare meaning to go on a mission, to go with a mission. From now on, the term ambassador, from ambactiare, the term was used to describe ambassadors. And the final idea, the first modern foreign ministry was established in 1626 in France by Cardinal Richelieu. Cardinal Richelieu was the prime minister of the French king Louis XIII. Richelieu saw diplomacy as a process of negotiation, of course, so he created the Ministry of External Affairs of France in order to centralize external policy and to ensure his control over the ambassadors. The same Richelieu coined another term in the diplomatic vocabulary. Very often he spoke about the raison d'etat. Raison d'etat means national interest. So after that king, Louis XIII, and especially during the reign of his successor, Louis XIV, the French became the language of diplomacy, surpassing the Latin. So let's remember, we had Akkadian, then Aramaic, then the Greek, then the Latin, then the French. French used to be the lingua franca of diplomacy until the 20th century. In our days, of course, English is seen as the lingua franca of diplomacy. And speaking about the English language, once again, it's my pleasure to invite our former ambassador to London, our former ambassador to England. Now he's extraordinary and plenipotentiary ambassador of Romania in the Cyprus Republic, His Excellency Sorin Dan Mihalache. Good evening. Good evening, Sorin.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, friends. I hope you can hear me very well and see you.
It's okay.
It's quite complicated to make this switch from the COVID and anti-COVID measures to the history of diplomacy and to Brexit and its consequences on higher education. I'm just 2 hours away. At 2 o'clock, I took my second vaccine, which was the rappel, as you call it, the second stage. And you can notice that I'm still standing. I still can talk. I had no side effects. And hopefully I will join this 95% of people that were immunized through this vaccine. Thank you, Tova Ben-Kerbis, for inviting me to speak before this event, the second day ambassador. It's a tradition that I like very much, and it's an honor for me to address to you this evening. Somebody asked how the COVID era will impact on diplomacy and how it's working, how diplomacy is working in through electronic instruments. And Ambassador Saranga and Daniela Goodman gave their answers, which are similarly to my opinions. But I believe there is more than adapting to, and this is a message that I want to convey to it. It's more than adapting the technologies and the techniques of diplomacy to new circumstances. It's also about understanding the speed in which things are changing in the world in a sort of compression of time. When history gets compressed and events are following very, very quickly, sometimes we as diplomats, but also as decision makers, we don't cope with this speed of changes. Our instrument, our analysis is still stuck in old paradigms. We still look at a world that is not existing anymore. If Adrian Cioroianu is still there, he can remember when we went first time in the European Parliament as observers. This was 2006.
2005, I think. In the autumn. In the autumn.
2006, we were the first Romanian observers in the European Parliament, as Romania was preparing to join 2007. and he can remember the very different agenda that we then discussed in Brussels and Strasbourg. We discussed about stronger Europe, we discussed about enlargements of Europe and the problem which enlargement was facing. We discussed about Balkans, we discussed about Ukraine, but in other terms, about Moldova, about Eastern Partnership. The debate was, should we as a European Union have to have more stronger institution or more weaker, more national-based institution? It was the debate between national sovereignty and federal approach, and there are just 14 years from that point of time, and today we have a completely changed agenda. We are today discussing about if and how Europe will survive crisis. We are now discussing, and now I come to the topic. We are discussing about one country, one big contributor to European democracy, to European economy, to European security. The UK is leaving the UK. How did we get here, and what are the consequences? Well, I can tell you, I was arriving in London as an ambassador on the day of the Brexit referendum. And I left London, finishing my term as an ambassador at the end of 2020. And there were 4 years in which I could follow all the debates between the moment of the referendum and the final of Brexit going to a institutional, the process going to an institutional end. And the questions, the interrogations that were in those 4 years, how, and many of our fellow citizens, UK citizens, ask themselves, okay, how did we get here? Because at the beginning, everybody, almost everybody, including some of the leading Brexiteer figures, regarded it more as an electoral exercise. Okay, we make this referendum, but we know it won't pass, and life will go in the same way, okay, with a little bit of play from the UK towards the European Union, and surprise, it passed. And then suddenly, thousands of questions were rising, because the system of relations between the UK and the European Union was so tight that when you had answers to one question, another 10 questions were put on the table. And one of these consequences, which was not very estimated, was the impact of the Brexit and of leaving the European Union on higher education, on universities in the UK. Most of the people in the universities, which are very multicultural, were anti-Brexiteers. 90% of them voted against Brexit. But now there is a very practical approach to be dealt with. For instance, how will universities in the UK survive in the next period? And this is not a very hypothetical question. It's very realistic, and people who lead higher education in the UK are quite desperate to find solutions, because in the UK, I believe higher education, universities are the third or probably the second big added value producer in the British society. And now they face this problem, how to move on. In UK, there are 150,000 students coming from Europe. The advantage of the universities in the UK consisted from two elements. Prestige and quality was the first, but also I would call it affordability was the second. Both of the advantages are now put under question. Some of the specialists in higher education say that reducing the number of European students will decrease also quality. It will decrease also the capacities of the universities to absorb new researches, new brains for studying there. So quality would be affected, but also affordability will be put under severe question, because, as you know, and now I'm going to very pragmatic approaches, to very pragmatic questions. The status of students is changing from beginning of August 2021. So they are not anymore assimilated with national students as they were as European citizens. They are now regarded as overseas students, which means that they will have to pay a tuition fee. There are various speculations around this tuition fee that, for instance, it could, depending on the specialty, faculty, university you choose, it could be between, some say, £15,000 and £50,000, others say between £30,000 and £60,000 in a year. It has to be further determined what the average cost will be, but it will be a cost which puts a barrier for many people that wanted to study in the UK to make this dream come true. They cannot access this governmental loan of £9,000, which could be paid back if you, okay, there are some technical conditions in some years, it's not accessible anymore. So this puts also a problem of financing higher education in the UK, because probably more students will have other choices for Holland or other countries within the European Union. In the terms that we were used before Brexit, for instance, studying in the UK was affordable for young student which came not from a very rich social group. So it was not a barrier of social standing of the family which had to support the expenses of the tuition fee. As I know, at this point of time, a decision or the debate is still going on. Probably the main universities in the UK will try to negotiate with the government to make some changes and put some special conditions for the students coming from Europe, but I don't know how successful this will be, taking into account also the relation between the university, the relations between the universities and the government in previous times, which were not sometimes the best in supporting governmental policies. The second element, which is for interest, is changing the, let's say so, the civil status, the migrational status of the students. As European citizens, there were no requirements to study in the UK. Now you will need a student visa, which will be granted under certain conditions. First, the acceptance of the university that you can study in that higher education institution. Second, you will have to prove that you have the money for the tuition fee. And third, you will have to prove that you have the money for covering the housing costs, and it was estimated between £1,300 and £1,700 in a year per student. So you have to provide proof to the authorities that you meet these three conditions to have this that you have this money. And at last but not at least, there will be also changes in paying the health services during the period of study. For sure, the point 1 and 3 is probably still under discussion. There are also separate policies from the governments of the devolved regions in the UK, from Scotland, from Wales. The Scottish government announced that it will be supporting in the future the same financial scheme for the universities in Scotland. It has to be, it has to follow. You can find a lot of details. I tried to give you an overall picture about this. There are for sure a lot of details. You can find them on the UK government's website, including the regime of student visas, what you need for. But I believe it's still open debate, because I know what the feelings are in the British higher education system, which is one sector of the British society which is most hit by the Brexit. And coming back to the beginning, I believe, well, we have to try to understand this dynamics of the new times, new world, when a populist idea and populist politicians try to use an issue for strengthen their electoral basis, and it comes out a very, very big problem, and now everybody is trying to solve it in a sort of acceptable manner, because also universities made a projection of their development, of their investment, material investment, number of teachers, based on a system that was existing. Now they are talking about reducing personnel. I could give you an example which is quite public. The chairman of the London School of Economics cut himself half of the salary to give an example that the prestigious London School of Economics also faces this crisis, and so it is very it's a very dynamic and complicated environment. Thank you, and for those that want to follow a diplomatic career, remember we should adapt our instruments of understanding to a new speed of history. Thank you very much.
It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure, Your Excellency. A very useful and a very pragmatic approach due to His Excellency Sorin Dan Mihalache. Dear students, if you have any question for His Excellency, don't hesitate about the Brexit or about the impact on the education. There are hundreds and thousands of Romanian students in the UK. So it is a serious problem for all our European students. There are any questions? Please. So Catalina Alexandra, please.
Yes, I have one question. How difficult is it now to enter in a UK university?
Sorry?
Catalina Alexandra asked, how difficult is to enter in a British university right now? The ambassador just said some details. Please, Dan.
Well, every university has its system. You have to apply, but you have to take in account a new environment, which means tuition fee, and which means also covering making the proof that you cover the spendings. But in being admitted, it's the decision of the university based on the point system that every university is establishing.
Yeah.
Usually Romanians are choosing 2 or 3 universities depending, and then wait to see where they are.
Yeah, thank you. Another question from Aida.
Answer.
Adia.
Thank you. Sorry.
Okay.
Please introduce yourself.
My name is Adia and I come from Iași, from Institutul Teoretic de Informatică Grigore.
Adia, excuse me, Adia, please.
Well, I would like to ask if you consider Brexit as a consequence to populism, and besides that, I would like to ask what should a student from Romania, considering studying in UK, what should this student know beforehand and that the embassy could provide?
Thank you.
We can make a very long debate about populism and Brexit. And also populism was a type of answer to very divided societies. As other political phenomena that happened in the world, I won't nominate them because it's not on the European continent. Well, under our eyes, nations accumulated deep social and political fractures, frustrations, and then they came these very simple answers, like populism. It was a very huge surprise for me to travel, when I traveled 4 years from northern to southern UK, from Scotland to Wales, the places where migrants are were anti-Brexit. Tolerant, multicultural, and non-Brexiteers. You cannot find Brexiteers, hardcore Brexiteers, I don't know, in London, in Edinburgh, in Manchester. You find them in the middle of the, or in the mid-Englands, where they didn't see a migrant never in their life. This is a paradox. But they think that once migrants will come and take their jobs, even though there is no migrant around yet there. We will provide necessary information, also the embassy. I know there are a lot of questions. I don't have all the answers because some of them are very specific, but I'm glad that you're still interested in the British education system.
Still another question, Your Excellency, from Bianca Pavel, please.
Hello, my name is Bianca Pavel. I'm from Colegiul Național Mircea Cuviță Iași, and are we going to need a COVID-19 approved passport in order to participate in programs such Erasmus or study abroad?
I don't know what it is. What did you see a COVID-19 approved passport?
So the answer is,
if we need like a certificate for that we're vaccinated for COVID-19 in order to participate in programs such Erasmus.
It's not a link between participating in programs and entering the country. So you need this COVID test, the PCR, for entering the country. This is under the. It's not about higher education. It's about I don't know, border control, border management.
Yeah, it is a topic indeed. It is a topic. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. It was Sorin Dan Mihalache, our ambassador, the Romanian ambassador to the Cyprus Republic and former ambassador to London. Once again, thank you very much. I'll begin the fifth panel, Safe Academic Life for Students in the COVID-19 Pandemics, the case of the Interdisciplinary Center from Herzliya, Israel. It's my pleasure to invite our friends, our colleague, Professor Jonathan Davis, Vice President for External Relations and head of the Rafael Recanati International School, Lauder School for Government, Strategy and Diplomacy. Jonathan, are you with us? Good evening. Jonathan Davis, Professor Davis. Is he connected or? To reconnect our colleague Jonathan Davis, to be not in connection with us from Herzliya, Israel. It's one of our colleagues for many years. Let me remind you, dear friends, that this is the 10th International Laude-Reut Conference, and the second one, and the second one during the pandemic. So, Jonathan Davis, hello, good evening.
Hi, how are you?
Just fine. So please, the floor is yours, Jonathan.
Okay.
You'll speak once again. You will speak about safe academic life for students. The case of your.
If we talk about safe academic life. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. If we talk about safe academic life for students, we first of all have to talk about safe academic life for students in Israel. And basically, all of our students right now are being vaccinated by the Pfizer vaccine. All Israeli students from the age of 16 and above can vaccinate right now in Israel. This includes foreign students. Foreign students at IDC Herzliya, which is my university, are being vaccinated as we speak, so that we have on campus we have in Israel about 1,000 international students who are physically here. Half of them live in our dormitories, half of them live in apartments in Herzliya and Tel Aviv, and they're all being vaccinated. Approximately 3.5 million people in Israel have been vaccinated, and we assume that within 2 or 3 weeks, about 5 million people in Israel will be vaccinated. So first of all, there's the business of the vaccinations. Secondly, those students who want to come and study here, within a couple of weeks, when we allow for people to come through Ben Gurion Airport once more, students will also be allowed to come into Israel. Temporarily, Israel has frozen entry to Israel of all tourists, which also includes students. But this is going to be unfrozen in the very near future. We've taken COVID. We've taken the challenges of COVID at IDC Herzliya, which is Israel's first private university, and we teach in English. We have a number of Romanian students, and I'm very pleased that Tova Binun, who is the president of the Reut Laude Foundation and invited me to be on this talk, has me actually speaking about how our students are right now studying through Zoom, but we hope that later in the semester we'll begin teaching also by hybrid. Teaching by Zoom is not as nice as teaching in person in the classroom, but we took 300 of our computer science students, and these computer science students have been working together with our professors, and our professors have learned how to give lectures by Zoom. And I think we do it quite well, and I think we do it quite dynamically. So if there's anyone in Romania or out there, I know this is a conference on diplomacy. Usually every year when we have this conference on diplomacy, a number of professors from IDC Herzliya come to Romania and they speak at the conference. Unfortunately, this year, Tova had to make this conference a little smaller and to make it by Zoom. Hopefully by next year, things will calm down and we'll continue meeting with each other together physically. If any student out there has any personal question of me, they can always send me an email and I'll be very, very happy to answer your email on a personal basis. But since this
Jonathan, do you hear me, Jonathan? Jonathan, please verify the sound. Jonathan. 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 Jonathan, please verify the sound in your laptop. Problems with the connection. Professor Jonathan Davis will try to reconnect. Shall we continue with the others, or? In that case, dear students, in that case, dear colleagues, please keep your questions for Professor Jonathan Davis. We'll try to reconnect with him. And now it's my pleasure to propose to you the sixth panel, the mission of a diplomat in the COVID-19 pandemics. We'll have four key speakers. His Excellency Emil Hurezeanu, the Romanian ambassador to Berlin in Germany. His Excellency Luca Niculescu, the Romanian ambassador to Paris in France. Her Excellency Luminița Odobescu, she's the Romanian ambassador to the European Union in Brussels, and His Excellency Lazar Comănescu, former Minister of Foreign Affairs, ambassador, one of our colleagues and friends of the Laude-Reut educational complex. Your Excellency Emil Hurezeanu, I'll give you the floor if you are with us.
Well, yes, thank you. Thank you
Excellent.
for the floor.
Excellent.
Thank you for the floor, Minister.
The virtual floor, the virtual floor.
Well, virtual or physical or mechanical, it's great to be with you today again. I'm witnessing this two-day ambassador, two-day, not the second day, not the two from the 2 days. It's today, it means just today ambassador. I'm witnessing this just today ambassador since 15 years. So I've been much longer with your program of two-day ambassador than with my mandate here in Berlin. I'm sending you all a big hug and a royal salute from Berlin through Bucharest to Israel, I want to recall somehow selectively our audience, because I find that this audience is just impressive. This global flavor, it's very impressive. It's not usual. More over 200 attendants, students, which is great. 25 public schools from Bucharest. I'm a bit sad that we did not name the schools. 25 public schools in Bucharest must be the most important schools in Bucharest. Then I want to salute very briefly the great National College Samuel von Bruckenthal from my hometown, Sibiu. I think this is the premiere when this school is attending the program. Then the schools in Iași, the school in Craiova, the Tikhon Hadash School. Irony, hey, I would like to call this irony, hey, irony, but it's irony, hey, I don't know, I'm sorry about this. Leo Beck, I know who Leo Beck was, a German Jewish scholar, and he gave his name to a big prize for Jewish German cultural accomplishment. Then, of course, the Laude-Reut High School in Bucharest, which is my, I don't know which one, home since at least 15 years. Tova, it's our super host since ever. Her colleagues, the professors, then Mr. Chair, Minister Cioroianu, esteemed colleagues from everywhere. My point, listening especially to my colleague Mihalake, formării in London. I was recalling what a former English king, his name is Henry VIII, don't laugh, used to say to each of his 6 wives. What I'm saying now is not very politically correct, but I'm a diplomat, not a politician. So, you know, Henry VIII, a very famous English king, because among others, he has 6, not less than 6 wives, and 3 of them perished, beheaded. The other ones have had the chance to die normally. He used to say to each of one prior to his marriages, "I won't keep you too long, madam." So please understand, being connected with you was a great pleasure, but our time is somehow measured. This is the second occasion when I get the chance to talk about diplomacy in the pandemics, 19 COVID pandemics times. We did it last year, I think in November. Things did not change much in between. We do not practicing anymore the classic diplomacy. But what does it mean, classic diplomacy? We're not practicing anymore classic diplomacy after the invention of the telephone, of the telegraph, of the online computer systems. So the conventional diplomacy alluded by our colleague Cioroianu, so sending people with mandates to other countries in order to convince the other guys to avoid the war, it's overcome since long. Now, the real diplomacy, the physical diplomacy, which is essential, integrative to diplomacy. You cannot be a physician without consulting physically a patient. Professor Străinu Cercel left us on purpose, but he knows very well this. You can make a consultation online, but still it would be better to see the guy, to feel it, to touch him or her. So you cannot be a real diplomat without this touch sensation, feeling. There are many things we are not said, which are not worded between diplomats or between counterparts. within this realm of diplomacy. The looks are important, the silences are important, and so on and so forth. Well, given the fact that we do not have this touching, touch me not, was the title of the film prized in Berlinale in the International Film Berlin Festival some years ago. Touch me not. So we do not we have this touch me not diplomacy right now. What does it mean? We have some substitutes, and I want to just to name them. I won't get into detail. I don't want to. I would like to respect what I said a couple of minutes ago. I won't keep you too long, madams and gentlemen. So we have, I think the first substitute is the epistolary diplomacy. So we cannot talk to the guy, to the chancellor, let's put it on the highest level, or to a minister, or to a prime minister, a Bundesland prime minister, or to a rector of a university, or to a student. Then what do? You're writing to her. So this epistolary genre, epistolary art of conveying messages, which was a long time ago practiced through Richelieu's times. Since then, it's again with us, practiced, very useful. So you have a problem, you wrote to the chancellor, you wrote to the foreign minister, and you got the answer. You wrote him or her online, you got the answer earlier on, because she or he, they are in home office, locked down. The flock down, it's what's happening right now in Germany, because we are overwhelmed by snow right now. Then we have people coming and going, transiting Germany, for instance. We have more than 1 million Romanians living here, even more, 1 million, probably 200-300 Romanians. They are the old emigres from the Cold War times. They are this new migration on basic equal rights. So people finding a workplace in Germany. We have the seasonal workers coming in the springtime, in 1 month, for instance, like last year, coming for working in asparagus farming complex, so to speak. Well, there is kind of problem with them, because they, last year we used to have a huge scandal here, which we very much regret, because thousands of people in the meantime, during the fully interdiction of trespassing the borders, came, however, through plane to Germany, and there were problems. On the other hand, we have this humanitarian or consular diplomacy. So you have to help people. You have to take into account that your own connationals are here, coming as businessmen, as asparagus seasonal workers, and they have a problem. They got a problem. We have only 15 consular functionaries, even less consuls. So you have to cope somehow with this open, bleeding problem. Because normally, as a diplomat in Germany or wherever in this world, you're not allowed, according to the Diplomatic Convention of Vienna, 1961, you're not allowed to contact directly without being called upon a bleeding scandal or a bleeding problem. I'm not allowed to go to the farmer and asking him, what are we doing with my connationals? What the hell are you doing here? You're not respecting the rights of my people. So you have to use what is the other species of forced diplomacy during pandemic time. I would call this diplomacy by proxy, proxy diplomacy. We used to have this notion of war by proxy. Jonathan will remember this, of course, other guys as well. These wars by proxy were typical for the Cold War period. So the Korean War at the beginning of the 50s, last century, was a classical war by proxy, because in the two main poles, adversaries, were the US and China and the Soviet Union, not the two Korean parts by then. There was the North and the Southern Korea. There are people saying that even the Arab-Israeli wars were wars by proxy, but I have my doubt this. Jonathan can contradict me. So war by proxies during the Cold War were the wars overseen by far, or not so by far, even closely, by the Soviet Union and the communist bloc on one hand, and the US and her allies on the other hand. Now we have a diplomacy by proxy. What does it mean? I'm not able anymore to do things myself for a reason or another reason. We're blocked within the total virtuality, which is not always practicable, which is not always the best way of communicating. And in this case, we're using the services of our proxies. Who are the proxies? The feelers, the negotiators, the brokers, proxies, intermediaries. They are people, girls and boys, well-known VIPs, well-known persons within the country. Here in Germany, for instance, we have probably over 10,000 doctors. The highest number of foreign doctors in Germany are the Romanians. It's somehow so pity, because the higher the number of Romanian doctors in Germany, the less doctors we do have in Romania, which is really a problem. But I'm not here to answer the questions, why are the Romanian doctors emigrating to Germany or to UK or to France in order to work and to have a better life there, and not staying in Romania, especially in these times of crisis, of sanitary crisis. These intermediaries are the professors, are the doctors within these 10,000 doctors, physicians of Romanian origin working in the German hospitals, clinics. At least 2,000 are professors and Chefarzt, Oberärzte, as the Germans say. So directors of clinics, professors and director of clinics. What does it mean? It means that during this pandemic, another dimension of our diplomacy by proxy is the sanitary or the medical diplomacy. What does it mean? You have the clinics like Charité here, the highest hospital in the world, closed exclusively with COVID patients. But you have people with cancer in terminal phases. You have friends or not, unknown Romanians who treated themselves, who were treated themselves in Germany 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and they would like to come again in order to finish their treatment. And this is no more possible for them to get into the country and to get in the clinics because they are closed. So what is the diplomat doing? Facilitating the transfer of these cases, the transit of the sick people from Romania to Germany, letting them inside the country. So convincing through epistolary diplomacy, the professors, the director of the clinics, that this guy has to come in. And sometimes we're successful, sometimes, most of the time we are successful, let's say, like this. So when I was asking my friends from Laude-Reut High School in Bucharest. What the hell I'm going to say again about practicing diplomacy in the pandemic crisis, because we are all saying the same things. They are nothing new. So there is a huge virtuality, like an aquarium with different species of fishes, and we are all swimming and finding our ways. It's a darkly lit, grimly lit aquarium, because there is no ray of hope, actually. I don't want to be too pessimistic. I don't want to identify myself to the wives of the poor Henry VIII, feeling the nearing of the end, but still, we're witnessing very grim times. So in this case, we have to find the reasons of being useful, of being helpful. So that's why I mean that being diplomats right now and practicing epistolary, medical, humanitarian, consular diplomacy, would be good enough. It's good enough. If the national interest, raison d'etat, are put on silent, on the mute mood. So let's use the ways and means, the practical ones, who make us still useful and helpful. I'm very glad, and this is the end, that this year, Tova, who is full of ideas, as usual, too many ideas, Tova. So she proposed to us, to the German embassy in Romania and to the Romanian embassy in Germany, to organize, to put pieces together in order to have a huge program based in Bucharest, in Germany, in Sibiu, in different various places in Bucharest as well, dedicated to the 1,700 of Jewish presence in Germany. As you might know, maybe not, I'm telling you this. This year, we have a very unusual anniversary of seeing with the benefit of the hindsight, of the retrospect, this 1,700 of Jewish presence in Germany in 321 after Christ. The Byzantine Emperor Constantine accepted for the first time in the European history that Jews can be settled down in Cologne, Köln, from today, in Western Germany. And then the Jewish people in Cologne, they built up a synagogue. So the first Jewish presence in Germany, and one of the first Jewish presences in Europe, was in Cologne. So we have 1,700 of this uninterrupted. The interruptions were tragic. Presence of the Jewish population in Europe, and so I'm very glad that we'll put together the pieces of this very complex program, and we'll be part of it. So I give you only some examples of what diplomacy is no more. What a diplomat is no more. Actually, we have to reinvent ourselves. It will keep on going longer than we think. I'm afraid, but still, giving the essential fact that most of our listeners and viewers are students from all these great countries, Romania and Israel. Given the fact that Saint Protector of Berlin is the same one with the Saint Protector of Bucharest and the Saint Protector of Jerusalem in Christian terms. Probably you didn't know this. And this Saint Protector of Berlin, of Bucharest, and of Jerusalem is Archangel Michael. Also good. So we have enough reasons to be hopeful. We shall overcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. We shall overcome indeed. A very interesting set of ideas from Berlin, His Excellency Emil Hurezeanu. The main idea being that we must adapt, we must reinvent ourselves. Your Excellency Hurezeanu, please stay with us in order to take some questions. That idea of our back to square one, to the epistolar diplomacy, and now we'll see a kind of video diplomacy, because in France, in Paris, our friend and colleague, Ambassador Luca Niculescu, he sent us a message, a video message. But before the message from Paris, I have the pleasure to once again to salute the presence of Jonathan Davis. Jonathan, this time, do you hear me?
I hear you. Do you hear me?
Excellent. Yeah. Please,
okay,
keep
I'm
going,
sorry.
please. Please.
First of all, I'm very glad that I was cut off because I had the opportunity of hearing His Excellency, the Romanian ambassador to Germany, and many of the things he said spoke a lot to me. I love the quotation about Michael. Okay, I thought that was excellent. Can you still hear me, because your photograph has frozen?
Yeah, it's okay.
All right, terrific.
Welcome.
So first of all, I really love what you had to say, and I love when you speak about Berlin and Bucharest and Jerusalem. I think there's a lot to be said for it. A lot to be said for it. We won't go into all of the details, but we agree with each other on 95% of the things. And 95% is always a good number, because 95% of the people who take the Pfizer vaccinations become healthy. So 95% is a good amount. What I would like to say is that the Abraham Accords, which our distinguished Israeli ambassador to Romania alluded to before, those Abraham Accords have already had an impact on my university, because I have right now students from Bahrain and students from the UAE, and I have students from Morocco who have applied to come to study at IDC Herzliya, and these are individuals of Islamic background. And it's interesting, because I don't have any such students from Egypt or from Jordan, but I will now have students from Morocco and from the Emirates. And I do have, by the way, students coming from Sudan, which is also an interesting, but not from Jordan and not from Egypt, because with Jordan and Egypt, it's a much colder peace. And the peace which we've recently made with these other countries seems to be a warmer peace. And the other part of the puzzle here, which I think is important, is the fact that the Palestine Authority has rejected the Abraham Accords. And so have members of the Israeli parliament from the United Arab Party in Israel also rejected the Abraham Accords, even though those Abraham Accords would help their towns and cities and villages economically, would increase the per capita income by dozens of %, because the Arabs who live in Israel can do great business in the Emirates, in Bahrain, and in other places. So I wanted to mention that. And if we're talking about diplomacy, something which bothers Israel a lot is the fact that the International War Tribunal in The Hague has decided that it wants to consider trying Israel, considering Israelis such as myself. I'm a lieutenant colonel in the Israeli Army reserves, so it could be that some individual in The Hague will decide that I'm a war criminal, okay? At a time when I think this is absolutely absurd. And so sometimes I think diplomacy can also be hypocritical, just as I think that the United Nations Council on Human Rights, which has had members sitting there, such as Cuba and Russia and China and Arab countries like Libya in the past and Syria, where human rights and them really don't go hand in hand, okay? What's happening in Russia right now is not exactly human rights, but you will never find that council speaking about Russia. They will spend 60% of their agenda, okay, talking about Israel. They will not be talking about Cuba. They will not be talking about members of the Islamic faith in China, okay, who are put in re-education camps, okay? They won't be talking about that. They'll be talking about Israel. So I think all of you students of diplomacy have to also know that diplomacy can be quite hypocritical, okay, at the end of the day. And so we in Israel, we look at that very carefully. We're extremely pleased by the way the Republic of Romania sees Israel. We're pleased by the way Greece sees Israel and Cyprus sees Israel and other European countries. But there are some other European countries who, in my opinion, still don't get it. And when it comes to the nuclear agreement with Iran, we believe that we do not believe in what the Iranians say. We believe that the Iranians seriously consider destroying the state of Israel. And when you come and use European tactics with the Iranians, I think the Iranians take great advantage of many of these European countries because we're talking about the Middle East. So I know what I'm saying to you may not sound politically correct, okay? But when it comes to diplomacy, it's all fine and dandy. I live in Israel. I'm an Israeli citizen, and I'm providing you with some current events about how many Israelis on the street feel here. When it comes to the Iranian agreement, by the way, a vast majority of the political parties in Israel are against that agreement, and only a minority of Israelis, when you look at the polls, are in favor of it, because we're always concerned about our survival. So I think I've spoken enough, probably upset enough people. Part of diplomacy is also upsetting people when you actually say what you think. I could go on and on. I would just like to say that the Romanian students on our campus who are active with Model United Nations and who are active on the debating team, one can readily see that the Romanian students who come to our university have been given a great education in Romania. And when they come here, they thrive and they flourish. And I would like to commend all of the hundreds of students who are on this diplomacy conference. I want to thank you for being on the conference. I want to thank you for being so patient. I know that listening to me now when you're so tired of 2 hours of Zoom is probably the last thing between you and dinner or something like that. So I will refrain from speaking anymore. And I hand the microphone back to the distinguished, to His Excellency, who is so diplomatically and nicely running this conference. And you're running the conference so nicely and in such a fine way that I almost feel like we're sitting all together in the same room in spite of Zoom. So here we are, we use Zoom. Basically, we use the challenge of Zoom, okay, in order to find benefits from it, because normally so many people from around the world, including Israel and other high schools, would not necessarily be able to be at this conference physically. And so I wish upon all of the countries in Europe the best of health. I hope you get the vaccinations. I'm happy that my prime minister managed to negotiate with the various companies that we have 10 million vaccinations here for 10 million people. Part of our problem in Israel is that the ultra-Orthodox, the very Orthodox Jews, and some of the Arab community are listening to fake news, and they don't wish to be vaccinated, okay? Because there are some fake news people on the internet, okay? I want to recommend all of you in Romania and in Europe to fight these fake news people and to get everyone you can, okay, to get vaccinated. Because the more people who get vaccinated, the better it is. And if it was up to me, some of these fake news people would be taken off of Twitter and taken off of the internet completely, because health, in my opinion, is much more important than fake news at this time, okay? That's my view on the situation. And that's it, folks. God bless all of you.
Thank you, Jonathan. As always, it is a pleasure to hear you. Jonathan Davis, Vice President, External Relations from the Interdisciplinary Center from Herzliya. Please stay with us, Jonathan, in order to take some questions. And now I have the pleasure to say hello to Her Excellency Luminița Odobescu. She is in Brussels, I suppose, because Her Excellency is our permanent representative, the Romanian permanent representative to the European Union, Ambassador Luminița Odobescu. Good evening.
Yes, good evening. Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody from a very white Brussels. So I would like to thank the Laude-Reut Educational Complex for the invitation to participate in this online debate. And many thanks, Tova. Good to see you on the screen. It's always a pleasure for me to take part in your events, and I would like to commend you all for these initiatives that bring us together. They are very engaging and very instructive. Well, it's been almost a year, I would say, since our societies, our very lives have been marked by this COVID-19 crisis. And I must tell you that I remember very well. I hope you can see me and can hear me.
Okay, yeah, it's okay, Luminița.
Yeah. So I'm saying that I remember very well the last year, February, because practically for us here in Brussels, it was a kind of beginning of crisis, fighting with the invisible enemy, I would say. And I learned something in my experience as diplomat here in Brussels, because I've been through some crises, of course, of a different nature. When you face a crisis, you have to adapt yourself quite quickly. So the only way to cope with a crisis is to quickly catch up with the reality and to quickly adapt to this new reality, I would say. Emil, my colleague, said that we have to readapt ourselves. I think we had to readapt, and this is what we have done. I mean, and quite quickly. So let me share with you some of my own experience during this crisis as a diplomat, but also at a personal level. As you probably know, the permanent representation of Romania is the permanent representation of Romania to the EU is the main communication channel between the Romanian authorities and the EU institutions. I mean, all the ministries, the government, the presidency office, the president office, and the channels with European Commission, European Parliament, with the member states, the representative of other mission here in Brussels. We are Romania's largest diplomatic mission. I coordinate a team of over 120 diplomats, colleagues, with expertise in most of areas, I would say, with very specific mandate. My work our work used to be very interactive and very dynamic. And we used to be in permanent contact with our colleagues, in my case, with the ambassadors of the other 26 member states, with the representative of the European Commission, with the members of the European Parliament. I would say, in a different situation comparing with my colleagues, the ambassadors in different European capitals, I would say. Why? Because in this, in all these crises, the ambassadors, the COREPER 2, met. So we have been continuing to see each other and to work together, which is a little bit different. But also we had to adapt to the new reality, to this situation, to this crisis we face together. First of all, we had to adapt in terms of rules and procedures. So we prepare for my staff, together with my colleagues, clear rules, clear procedures to cope with this new situation. Whom to call, who is responsible, what to do. So this was very, very useful as a part of the team. Then what to do when we attend the meeting. In terms, because it was quite sensitive, because we didn't know exactly at the beginning what was about, And then we had to adapt our procedure, our rules, according to the Belgian rules, and according, of course, with my national and the instruction from the Romanian Foreign Ministry. Then, of course, we had to go online, or to go digital, I would say, and to adapt ourselves quickly, because we had to be in contact with our capitals, we had to organize meetings, and I have a fantastic IT team here. I learned a lot. I mean, of course, I learned how to mute and unmute myself, how to use WebEx, Zoom, all kinds of platforms. We were even in contact with some IT Romanian companies, which helped us to organize different events. So this was practically the second challenge. Also, we were used to organize all kinds of cultural events, and now we had to do it via internet. It's not easy to do it, but we have tried to do our best. Then, of course, we try to use more the social media, Twitter, of course, in Brussels, to present our position. We had to speak with media, with our colleagues from here, from Brussels. So I use the phone a lot. And of course, was and continue to be very, very important is to take care of our team. As I mentioned, we are the largest diplomatic mission of Romania. So it was not easy being away from our families. We were also in lockdown, not being able to see our families. So and it was very important for us to stay together as a team, because we had a lot of work to do. We were very responsible. We had to react to different requests and instruction coming from Bucharest. We had to coordinate with our colleagues. It was not easy, as my colleagues, the other ambassador, underlined. We are used to do this face to face, and we had to solve a lot of sensitive issues, for instance, to repatriate Romanians from other member states, to unblock, for instance, the free movement of goods, for instance, and to set up these green lines and to coordinate among each other. So a lot of challenges. And as I mentioned, it was very important to keep this team spirit in this very difficult period for all of us. So I personally discussed with each and every colleague. I was checking if they are okay. I tried to organize different, not only the discussion related with our work, but also to discuss about, about our family, to be very close to all of them. And this was very important for us as a team. And I learned a lot, as I mentioned, not only how to use these platforms, but also I had to adapt myself and my colleagues as well to this new reality. So I was not a fan, for instance, of the medical terms. If you're asking now, because now, for instance, tomorrow we will have a discussion of the ambassadors here in Brussels together with the Commission on the vaccines. So I was obliged to become a kind of expert in vaccines, and not only in vaccine, but in all these issues and subjects related to the current situation. So I think we faced as diplomats more or less the same challenges as others. It was a little bit different in my case, as I mentioned, because it's a different arena. We are working in a multilateral environment, and I was in a sense lucky because I met with my colleague on a regular basis. Last year, for instance, we had meetings of the ambassador even three times per week, all day long. Of course, keeping the physical distance, taking all the necessary measures to protect ourselves, and it was very useful in terms of solidarity and trying to sort together all the difficulties and problems we face in these unprecedented times. So I would say this is our life here in Brussels, and a little bit it's true different comparing to other capitals. And what I think this crisis maybe is too early to have some lesson learned about this crisis, but it's shown us the power of solidarity, the power of working together, because we are in this crisis together. In the last week meeting with my colleague discussing about vaccines, I used to joke saying that because my name is Luminica, little night, that they start to see me at the end of the tunnel. So because with the vaccination process, I think new perspectives are now ahead of us. And it's also very important for us as a lesson learned, even I said that it's too early, is to remembering our heroes. So we have to be grateful to all those who have steered us through this pandemic, medical staff, scientists, first line worker. I think it's also perfect opportunity. I used to put order in our values system. Who deserve our admiration? Who deserve our respect? Who should our role models be? So yes, we have to keep everything into perspective. And in this respect, a good grasp of history and of the past, even recent past, could be extremely helpful. I'm concluding my intervention with this open question, which hopefully will provide you with some food for thought. So yes, we have been together. It's a lesson of solidarity. It's a lesson of adapting ourselves to the new reality. But as I mentioned, I think the little light, we have started to see the little light at the end of the tunnel. Thank you.
Very much, Your Excellency. Thank you very much. Some useful remarks, in fact, and I think our friends, our students, for them it's quite useful to see that working in diplomacy, it's a privilege, but it's never easy. And in this crisis, we are forever together, as Her Excellency Luminica Odobescu, our ambassador to the European Union, just said, and we'll prepare the final minutes of our meeting. We have, as I said, a message sent by Luca Niculescu, our ambassador to France. We'll have also some questions for all our ambassador, but I have the pleasure to invite His Excellency Lazar Comănescu, Minister Lazar Comănescu. He's a former Minister of Foreign Affairs, former Ambassador to Brussels, to the European Union, and also former Ambassador to Berlin in Germany. Your Excellency, Lazar Comănescu, good evening. Your Excellency, Lazar Comănescu. Do you hear me, Lazar? Please verify your sound on the screen. Your micro. The connection. Dear friends, dear students, once again, please prepare your questions. Let's hope that Lazar will succeed. We have our technicians.
It's okay, yeah?
Excellent. Bravo, Lazar.
Well,
you're on. You're on.
Digitalization is sometimes become a kind of a, let's say, challenging way of doing things.
Yeah.
Well, good evening, everybody, first of all. And let me start by saying how pleased I am to be again, albeit in a virtual way, together with Laude-Reut School and the students, together in this conference on diplomacy, which I personally find as a flagship among the most valuable activities carried out by Laude-Reut. And also, I'm particularly pleased to be today because if I am not mistaken, I hope my information is correct, it is the 10th diplomatic conference organized by Laude-Reut. And that means that we have also reasons for celebration. And for congratulations to Laude-Reut, and particularly to our friend Tova, who was the Luminița Odobescu was speaking about the little light at the end of the tunnel. I think that Tova is a brightening light. So thank you very much, and congratulations, Tova. Congratulations also for what I would say it's a very timely chosen topic of this conference. I feel quite released being having the honor to speak after so important friends of mine having expressed themselves on the subject. And in addition, we are well beyond the schedule of the conference in time. So I will try to be as brief as possible, all the more so as my friends, as I wanted to say, highlighted almost everything which I wanted to do myself. But so just a few remarks. My first one is that I find, and I think that everybody agrees with me, it was normal for diplomats in the countries they are accredited in to concentrate in this period of time their activity first and foremost to the problems and on the problems of their compatriots traveling, living in, as Ambassador Horezeanu was mentioning, traveling to or crossing those countries. And I think that I'm not paying lip service. I pretend to know a little bit and understand a little bit the activity of the Romanian diplomats. And let me say very clearly that I think that we deserve to be proud of what our diplomats, and especially those with us today, Romanian diplomats, have been doing all throughout this very difficult period. Second, it is important, and I see again from what our ambassadors, our diplomats abroad have been doing throughout this period. It is extremely important for a diplomat to keep informed their own authorities, their national authorities, about how their host country acts and cope with the crisis, and advance proposals for exchange of good practices or for cooperation and mutual support. And again, my praise for what our diplomats have been doing, as I very much want to commend ambassadors here in Bucharest, starting in front of all, I will place Ambassador Saranga. Third remark of mine, extremely important for the diplomat, that is, despite concentrating their efforts on the crisis, they need not to lose sight of, even in this type difficult time, they need not to lose sight of the period after, as well of the fact that not to lose sight of the multidimensionality of relations, international relations, and interests their countries have in the host country or organization. Again, I think that I have reasons to commend our ambassadors of what they have been doing. My fourth observation or remark, I would say that perhaps more than other crises, the pandemics demonstrated how important the solidarity, as the Minister Otobescu was saying, is for coping, for enabling coping with global challenges as the pandemic, but I'm pretty sure that we will have to face other global challenges as well in the future. So solidarity is extremely, it's a must. And it is extremely important as well, and this pandemics enabled us to see that, how important it is to tackle challenges through cooperation and not competition. And I would say that I can give an example, a positive one. While at the beginning there was a lot of criticism about how the European Union has been coping with these pandemics, but given the increase of the awareness of the need of solidarity, at the end I would say, at the level of the European Union, important actions were undertaken, and I'm referring just to two examples. How the vaccination process has been managed, with ups and downs, yes, but it is, in my opinion, an achievement. And secondly, but related to that, is the adoption of the resilience, the famous new generation, next generation EU. I mean, the fact that agreement was reached first time in my to my knowledge in history of the European Union, to agree on a program, a really community program dedicated to all the member states and their citizens. And so that's how cooperation is efficient. My fifth remark, but closely linked to the previous one. The pandemics clearly showed how important the international cooperation and the multilateralism is in tackling global crisis. I should add that cooperation does not exclude competition. I have to say that. In fact, competition, but a fair and rule-based one, has been one of the main engines to progress, with one condition, nevertheless: competition for progress, not competition for domination. Finally, and still progress related, the current crisis and efforts aimed at tackling it have showed in a much stronger way than it was the case in the past how important digitalization has become for the human activity, including, yes, in the management of international relations, that means for diplomacy. Indeed, what has been achieved throughout this period of time is possible only thanks to digitalization. Our conference today could not have been organized without digitalization. But, and with this, I come to a close, as I think it has been already mentioned throughout the conference. Irrespective of how much digitalization will further revolutionize our activities, and it will be doing that, including in diplomatic life and activity, one thing is sure, and excuse me for referring to my own experience. Diplomacy is the art of dialogue, and nothing, not even digitalization, can replace direct and face-to-face dialogue and human contacts, be it bilateral or multilateral. Direct contacts are all the more, in my opinion, are all the more important in this period of time, as we have to look, as I said, digitalization and all this technological revolution, it is a huge achievement of the mankind. But we have to look also to aspects which may be of a little bit darker nature. What I'm referring to, and why I'm insisting upon this importance of dialogue, direct dialogue among persons. Because digitalization also generated or helped, in inverted commas, spreading information much faster, not only good information. I remember that a few days ago, I think it was during the Davos conference, President Ursula von der Leyen was mentioning that fake news spread now 6 times more rapidly than real news. And this is something which we have to take into account, the diplomats have to take into account, because the diplomat cannot work without information. And so long as the information is deformed, that may infringe upon the capability of their own governments and their partners to take the right decisions. And finally, still connected to this, our conference and all what has been happening throughout the pandemics showed how important the investment in research and development is. And I will conclude really with saying that from this point of view, Israel, I think, deserves to be looked at as a strong source of inspiration. Research, investment in research and technology would help us overcome also these challenges, which even, well, the research and technological progress may raise to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Lazar Comănescu. Thank you for stressing the importance of the direct contact, the importance of knowledge, technology, science, and diplomacy. Finally, once again, it was Lazar Comănescu, former Minister of Foreign Affairs. Dear students, please prepare your question for Jonathan Davis, Professor Jonathan Davis, Their Excellencies Emil Hurezeanu, Luminița Odobescu, and Lazar Comănescu. And finally, right now, for a couple of minutes, the message from His Excellency Luca Niculescu, the Romanian ambassador in France. Please, the film. Sonorul.
Sonor.
Problem with the video. That's the problem of, as Lazar Comănescu said, that digital world has many bright faces, but it still keeps some secrets, it seems. So once again, we'll try to reach the video sent by Paris, from Paris by Luca Niculescu, the Romanian ambassador in France. In fact, the video is still good, but the sound, it's I'll verify in the meantime our students who wants to put some questions. Once again, please raise your hand, dear students, if you have questions. Yeah, we have a lot of questions. We have a lot of questions, but probably, I hope, we'll manage to reach the video. For instance, Radu Mihai. Radu Mihai, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. My name is Radu Costache, and I'm a student at the High School of Computer Science Grigore Moise Iași.
Moise from Iași, please, please.
And I have two questions. I would first like to ask His Excellency, Mr. Lazar Comănescu, because I know that he has a lot of experience also from working in international affairs during the socialist period in Romania. And I would like to know about how were the international affairs of Romania then and now, and especially, I mean, education for becoming a diplomat, requirements, perks, and the overall working conditions.
Yeah, that's a part of our history, the history of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Your Excellency, Lazar Comănescu, have you an answer?
Well, I really like this question, and let me underline one aspect which, in my opinion, is the key one. For a diplomat, the key in his key task is to serve the interest of his country in a spirit of cooperation and partnership with other countries. This is why I was so much stressing the importance of dialogue. A diplomat, so long, that means that he shouldn't be, let's say, he shouldn't play in the hands of those who try to, because of, well, given their position, political and so on, try to take benefit for themselves instead of benefiting the citizens of this country, of that country. And so starting from this, I would say that in the case of Romania, but I think in the case of many other countries as well, I former communist countries, there have always been very good professionals. The problem is how much each of those professionals were aware about whether those leaders of those times were promoting their own interests or of the regime interest or the interest of the citizens. And this is the key element. I wouldn't elaborate more on that. Was it a second part of your question? Perhaps I have forgotten.
I said that I wanted to know especially about the education that was needed then and now to become a diplomat, and the requirements, the perks, and the overall working conditions.
Yes, I can answer you because, you know, I graduated the Economic University of Bucharest in '72. And you may wish to know, by the way, here there is one important point which I want to stress. I think it was last night, the current Minister of Education, Sorin Câmpeanu, was speaking about the fact that there were not just speculations, but also, real proposals to exclude or to eliminate history and geography, or to combine the two of them and out of this the curricula of the students. For you to know the history, there was in Romania from 67 to somewhere 75 a kind of an opening which was very much beneficial for the young people from that time, including in terms of preparing diplomats. The University of Bucharest developed in 64, if I'm not mistaken, but it lasted only until 72 or 73, an extremely rich and valuable program for the training of diplomats. All of them graduates of the universities, but then they followed post-university studies. And again, speaking about the professional quality, that period produced a significant number of very good Romanian diplomats who, in between, my case is also an example, were thrown out from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but many of them were called back in '90, and they have been really people who helped advancing Romania as a democratic country, a member of the European Union. So, perks.
Lazar, I think it's okay, and I see your remarks as an invitation for Radu in order to read more on the history of the Romanian diplomacy. It's quite a subject, and I think your remarks were very useful. Let me pass to Lily Levy. Levy?
It's Lihi.
It's Lihi. Good evening, Lihi.
Good evening. I have a question. I don't know to which one to refer it, but what does an ambassador day in the COVID-19 period look like?
Probably Madam Odobescu and then Emil Hurezeanu to make a resume of their ideas. Your Excellency, Luminița.
Many thanks for the question. May I add a comment to the previous question? Just to
a short one.
Yes, just to say that today Romania has more than 30 ladies ambassadors. So I think this is a big difference. How is my life as an ambassador during the COVID? So I would start with today, for instance. I had a breakfast, of course, with 5 of my colleagues in a big room, physical, distance kept, of course. Then I came back because I have a visit of my prime minister to prepare. So I had a meeting with the protocol and with all the colleagues. I have here a very big room as well because we have to meet physically and to prepare all the meetings. And then I had some calls with my capitals, with one minister and one state secretary. And then I went back for discussions with another ambassador from third countries, of course. And then I started. I continue with this conference, and then I'm going back to prepare the co-repair, the meeting of ambassadors tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll start. It's very interesting. We'll start at 8:30 with a breakfast. Breakfast, a croissant and a big coffee, I think, with the Vice President of the European Commission, Šefčovič, discussing about relation between EU and UK. Then we'll continue our normal co-repair meeting of ambassador, co-repair 2 meeting, with a lot of subject on our agenda. Preparation of the next video conferences of Minister of European Affairs, Finance, and then Foreign Affairs. The preparation of the meetings of leaders, European leaders, on the 25th and 26th. So we practically discuss and prepare and listen to others, prepare this discussion. And then, of course, after the meeting, I report back to Bucharest, to my capital, to all the institutions. Then we'll have a lunch, cold one, of course, with physical distance. I must underline this because it's important, with the Vice President Dombrovskis on the trade issue, especially in the light of the new administration in Washington. We had some issues, so we are now openly discussing with the Commission what exactly it's our intention to discuss with our American partners and also with other partners as well. So and then in the afternoon, we'll continue our meeting of ambassador on vaccines. Exactly what is the state of play, what is the number, what are the problems. So we are discussing this, and then of course at the end of the day I have to quickly send the report of this meeting, long meeting, until 6 o'clock, I imagine, tomorrow to Bucharest in order to prepare the next decision. So this is my life as an ambassador to the EU. Of course,
agenda. Luminița, thank you very much. It's quite an agenda. I think Lihi understood. Emil Hurezeanu, if you want to give us some ideas about your agenda.
Well, I'm pretty envious listening to Luminița. Well, apropos, by the way, the perks, former and actual. She's a privileged worker. She works a lot. Cold lunches, okay, not good. I became myself a kind of cook, cooking for myself. What in normal times, in normal history, seemed to be a handicap, a problem for me, living in the penthouse of the building of the embassy. So, living where I'm supposed to work, it became since a year it's different. I mean, it's like living and working from home office. It's not very pleasant, not at all. In Germany, comparing to Brussels, they are not seeing each other anymore. So we are video talking, video convincing ourselves that we have to be friends or to be the real servants of our national interests. The idea is that following on what Luminița said and has been saying, and Lazar Comunescu also has been saying, this esprit de corps, this new solidarity, which is somehow, we are condemned to be more solidary than being solitary I'm a very solitary human being right now, talking to you, very pleased to be with you, hundreds of human beings. But immediately after that, I will be climbing up to my apartment, vastele apartamente, where I'm alone. So I won't. There are days and nights not coming out, and so do almost all my friends, ambassador or colleague ambassadors. But this compelled solidarity, plus the new obligation and the new task, common task, to share the good practices and to serve your own country's national interest in this specific, unexpected ways. This is our normal day and life. You know, one of the great perk or things of being diplomat are the receptions, of the ceremonies, le dîner en ville. I mean, talking, feeling, touching, which is done, which is gone, which is gone. So it's not very easy right now to practice this job, I would say, but still it's important. It's well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you very much. I think Lihi had an idea about what it means to be a diplomat today. Another question from Dumitru Sara. Sara.
Good evening. I want to ask anyone who wants to answer, what was the biggest challenge you faced since the virus started?
Excellent. Thank you. Probably Professor Jonathan Davis.
By the way, I'm not a professor. I'm just Jonathan Davis.
Jonathan Davis.
Jonathan Davis.
Colonel
Reserves.
Here's the story. The story is that the greatest challenge that I faced was students who wanted to come into Israel during this, before this first semester, where I had to personally negotiate with the Ministry of Health, with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and with the Ministry of Interior, the entry of close to 1,000 students from all the different continents of the world to come into Israel. And I took responsibility for the quarantine of 1,000 of them. And so that wasn't easy to do. I had to be able to I needed to have the interpersonal skills to be able to negotiate with the 3 different ministries, and together with the head of the international health within the Ministry of Health, to allow IDC Herzliya to have the responsibility of making sure, first of all, that we got these people to Israel, that we got these people from the airport to our dormitories or to their apartments, and then to take full responsibility for their quarantine of 2 weeks, where they could not leave their room for 2 weeks. And you know, it's not easy to supervise 18-year-olds not to leave their room for 2 weeks, okay? But the responsibility was on me. And I also had to make absolutely sure that they had food that would be brought to their doors. And I had to make sure that from a psychological point of view, there would be people in contact with them, and so they wouldn't freak out, okay, during this time. So for me, that was one of the main challenges, how to move 1,000 people to Israel at a time also when airlines are not functioning, at a time, by the way, when the Israeli consulates and embassies overseas frequently knew less than I did. They frequently knew less than I did. I had a couple of situations where I personally navigated the return of these people to Israel because by the time the consulates or the embassies received all the information from the Ministry of Health or from whomever, I already knew about it beforehand. So it was almost like being on some sort of a mission. And it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. I've spoken too much. You guys are getting hungry. I'm handing the microphone back to His Excellency.
Final idea, your final idea for that question. Okay, Okay, I will take two questions right now. Agam Aharon, are you with us? Agam Aharon. Maria Blaga.
Sorry, I couldn't unmute myself. I'm Agam Aharon, student
Please, Aharon, Agam Aharon.
from Tichon Chadash Herzliya. I don't have specific someone to ask the question, but the question is, do you feel that because of the pandemic, countries felt the need to promote the peace or unite with different countries, or that the pandemic didn't really change anything?
A very interesting one. It will be for all our key speakers. And the final question from Maria Blaga. Maria.
I have a question for Mr. Jonathan Davis. My name is Maria Blaga, and I come from the Emil Rakovica National College in Iași. The IDC Herzliya has turned the COVID-19 pandemic into many wonderful opportunities for progress in education. What is the key to successful teaching during challenging times like these, in your opinion?
Interesting. So your question is for Jonathan Davis, but I'll begin with Luminița Odobescu and Emil Hurezeanu for the first question. Agam Aharon, please, Luminița.
Well, as I did before, I want to also answer the previous question about the biggest challenge. But the biggest challenge for me was the negotiation for the budget and all this recovery package. I mean, almost 4 days and 4 nights. So you can imagine how difficult it was for all of us in a pandemic crisis and with all kind of restrictions to be with your president, not be able to have all the experts with you. So because we had a very limited team, number of colleagues in the meeting practically, and we had to react quickly. So and it was quite a huge challenge for all of us, for me personally, but at the end it was successful for Romania. And then on the question about the pandemic, for sure, in our case, pushed us to stay together and to work together. We have seen what's happened at the beginning, at 1 year ago, with the pandemic. I'm speaking about EU and the member states. We have seen what's happened then. With closer borders, all kinds of problems, citizens all around the globe, and it was only our chance to stay together and to try to solve the problems, because it was about our citizens, about lives, and all this situation. So this is why we had to adapt ourselves, and the issue and the word of solidarity was not only a word, but it was a reality of our work. And you have seen also Romania reacting very quickly in different situations, helping other member states at the last year. And it was also Romania was helped. We put in, for instance, together with the European Commission, a mechanism of rescue in trying practically to help other member states. So this was our key word for all of us working here in Brussels: solidarity. We are in this situation together, and the only chance we have is really to stay together and to find solution. This is why at the beginning, I mean, it's also the case, we started to coordinate, because you have seen the situation with the lockdown in different member states is quite different. So we had to prepare these colors to show what is the situation in a specific member state. We work together to keep the borders for our citizens and for the goods open. This is what we are doing, trying each and every day. Now we are discussing about vaccines and checking what are the problems, the numbers provided by the companies, checking with the capitals, trying to coordinate, trying to help each other about this new mutation. So this is the word for us. I mean, I think this is one of the lessons learned. It's about solidarity. We should be made united because it's a common, I would say, enemy.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Emil Hurezeanu, probably, please, the first question, if you please.
Yeah, sure. I think this practice, new practices or new lessons in order to be learned, fairness, loyalty, you have for the first time in history this forced understanding between France, whose brilliant Romanian diplomat Luca Niculescu was not been able to attend us tonight, and Germany. For the first time in the European history, and Luminița might contradict me if I'm mistaken, the pivot states of the European Union agreed upon a mutual system where this resilience and restructuring program, I never know the exact names of the European nominations, worked for everyone. So we're among the luckiest ones, with the Poles, with the Italians, getting over 30 billions of euros. Then we have the vaccines together. Well, it's admirable what in Israel, what happens in Israel with the vaccines. 10 million people have been vaccinated in between. Then Britain has also a separate path already, starting very vigorously with the vaccines, with the separate vaccines. Let's put aside the Americans. In Germany, which is the most powerful economy in Europe, originates the BioNTech vaccine with Pfizer together. But this did not put the Germans to keep for themselves, first of all, the vaccines, and then what is still available to give to the others. Everyone has been shared from Brussels. I think all these practices, these new practices, emergency measures, practices, and learned lessons are the best ways and means for keeping the peace and for pursuing the peace. So it will be, if we at the end of the tunnel, beside Luminița, will meet the peace as well, and we won't have what happens at the end of the roaring 20s last century, a new depression, given the poor state of the economy during such crisis, or even a war. Hopefully, with Luminița at the end of the tunnel and the peace, we'll have a bright light, not only a little Luminița, and also a much more solid peace, just because of the experiences we're getting through right now.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I just understood that Lazar Comonescu is still with us, but first of all, Lazar, allow me to invite Jonathan Davis to give the answer to me. What was the name? Maria Blaga. The question coming from Iași. Jonathan, please.
Okay, Maria, the professor who gives the lecture by Zoom, and we use Zoom, the professor has to be dynamic, and the professor has to prepare, and the professor has to use pyrotechnics and make the lecture more interesting than they normally would in the classroom, in order to keep the attention of the student on Zoom, and also keep the lecture shorter than normal in the classroom as well. And that's important. And the other thing is that the professor must behave in a way where they treat the student as their partner. They must treat the students as their partner, not try and create some kind of a distance, some sort of a medieval distance between the medieval professor who doesn't speak to the student, or who would say the university would be a great place if there were no students here, because these students really prevent me from doing my research. So our philosophy at IDC always has been that the student is our partner. In fact, our cafeteria, when we're not in Corona, there is no faculty club. Our professors always eat together with the students, okay? We think that's important. And so therefore, we need to broadcast this even more on Zoom. Another thing which I think is very important is to have the parents relaxed and be in contact with the parents of the students, so the parents are relaxed and don't drive their children crazy, okay? Because sometimes the students are doing just fine, but the students are more worried, but the parents are more worried than the students actually are. And I would say that lastly, it's important to hold Zoom conference calls together with students, not as a lecture, just asking them, what are their problems? Do they have problems before the exams? Do they need possibly some private lessons? Do they need some mentorship or something like this? At a time when some people are lonely in their rooms. It's just like His Excellency in Germany, in Berlin was saying. He goes up, he's lonely in his room. He's lonely in his room and he's taking a lecture. He needs to feel like he's not lonely, and that the other people in the class are with him, and that the professor is with him, and that someone is reaching out to that person, because the person may be taking the lecture in Israel, but the person may also be taking the lecture in Hong Kong or in Chile or in somewhere else. And so you need to be very humane. You need to reach out in the most humane way that you can. That's it, more or less.
Thank you, Colonel. Thank you. And a special question for Lazar Comanescu, a question coming from the Voltaire High School from Craiova. I don't have the name of our student. Voltaire High School. Marcu, Cristian Marcu. Are you with us?
Good evening. My name is Marco Cristian from Voltaire High School. I have a question for Mr. Emil Purezeanu, because he has a lot of experience about this. I would like to know how hard it is to be admitted to an university like the one from Boston. Also, one of the universities he did finish.
Ah, interesting. Emil Purezeanu.
Well, I didn't get the core of your question. Could you please repeat it?
Christian.
It was connected with my Boston University where I...
Yeah, how hard is to be received at that university?
Yes.
According
to your experience.
Yeah, okay. There were other times. For me, this episode had begun at the end of the 80s, last century. And I used to be already an editor with Radio Free Europe in Munich, an American-based operation. And as such, I enjoyed a journey as a special student with the University of Charlottesville, University of Virginia. And then, so I finished my School of Law in Romania in '79. Then I became a journalist. And as a journalist, I had been admitted at the Boston University for a master's degree in strategic studies and international relations. So there was a perk of being, by the way, of being journalist with an American radio station during the Cold War. I got this chance, and hopefully I really enjoyed being a student as a master's student. I've been only a master student with the Boston University. I think nowadays it's much more easier to get in. But you have to apply. You have to see on the online. What are the
Absolutely. Thank you. Lazar, this question, it's for you. We'll take randomly. Please help me. Andrei Liviu. Și apoi Andrei Liviu, if I correctly understood. Do you hear me, Andrei Liviu? Și apoi Andrei Liviu. Salomii Alexandru. Are they with us? Salomii Alexandru?
They just left after 4 hours of marathon, like
almost 4 hours. Radu Mihai Costache.
I have another question, if it is possible, to Mr. Jonathan Davis.
No. Listen, it's for Lazar Comănescu. I'm sorry, Radu, if you have a question.
Adrian.
Please, Lazar.
I don't know whether other questions will be raised for me, but let me.
You're right. Please.
Okay. Please. I simply wanted to make a brief comment related to the question put by Agamon, if I am not mistaken, peace and pandemics and so on. Simply what I simply want to say is that this pandemic has been yet another proof that any challenge or any crisis, besides challenges and difficulties, has to be also looked as a opportunity, creating opportunities. This is one point. And in my opinion, it was already underlined by all the speakers, one of the, let's say, assets, if I may say so, of the experience during the pandemics that it clearly increased the awareness of the importance of solidarity and cooperation. Point number one. Point number two is that it also increased the awareness about the fact that there are challenges that can only be dealt with through cooperation, and when it's cooperation, you have peace, and that there are challenges which can only be dealt with globally, like, for example, the climate. And I conclude by saying that we see that also from the fact that US are back in the climate arrangements and agreements in Paris. And this is climate is also a challenge which, if not appropriately dealt with, may generate conflicts. Once again, I think that there are also, let's say, developments which give us hope for additional efforts to increase the perspective of peaceful evolution of the mankind. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lazar. Dear friends, thanks to you, this panel was quite dynamic, the mission of a diplomat in the COVID-19 pandemics. And as I'm sure that you understood, we are completely run out of time. I sincerely regret there are some questions, many of them I'm sure that deserve an answer, but let's say that will be the 11th edition of our conference. Once again, thank you, Jonathan Davis, Emil Hurezeanu, Luminița Odobescu, Lazar Comănescu. It was a pleasure for me to be the chair of a discussion which began 4 hours earlier. And once again, from Daniela Goodman, our State Secretary, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador, His Excellency David Saranga, Eyal Ram from the Israeli Ministry of Education, his Deputy Director General there, Tova Ben Nun. She's still with me. Tova, once again, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, friends. Soon we will meet to the 11 sessions. Good night.
Good night. And after that, it was Professor Adrian Străinu Cercel with us tonight. And last but not least, Sorin Dan Mihalache. But most important was the presence of our more than 200, 250, 270, more than 270 at a certain moment, our dear students. And once again, I sincerely regret. I know they had many questions for all of us. Dear friends, dear colleagues, it was a pleasure. That will be the final minutes, because I understood that we'll have our video message from Paris. Let's say goodbye to you regarding our friend and colleague from Paris, France, His Excellency Luca Niculescu. Good evening to all of you.
Dear Tova, distinguished guests, dear students, thank you very much for inviting me to participate in this meeting. It's always very interesting to be able to discuss with you and with your brilliant students about the diplomacy and about what is to be a diplomat in these particular times. Because in the last year, our lives have been turned upside down. We go out much less. We meet much less people. We spend most of our professional times on the phone or in front of our computers. This is also true for our meeting today, because normally we would have taken the plane, we would have met in Bucharest, we would have spent a few hours together during this very interesting seminar, but also other hours discussing among ourselves, going to a restaurant or to a cafe to continue our conversations in smaller committees. We would have mixed professional and friendship. And today, unfortunately, this is not longer possible, because even if we started to have vaccines, which is a great thing, it will still take some months at least before the situation returns to what it was like before the coronavirus. And in the meantime, we will continue to talk and to see each other in this kind of video meetings. Of course, there are also some advantages, because, for example, all the students who are watching us today from Israel or from Romania, there probably would be fewer of them watching us in normal time. Your question today, Tova, was if the diplomatic life has also changed. And my answer is, of course it has. A diplomat must have, in normal time, a lot of meetings. He must gain and keep the confidence of his partners, to whom he must defend the position of his country. And let me tell you one thing which is very important here in France, the country where I currently live in. In Paris, for example, the best diplomatic exchanges take place over breakfasts, over lunches or dinners, because gastronomy is, as you know, an essential art in France. So if you want to have the best relations, you have to participate in many lunches and many dinners, with the risk of getting fat, of course, but you have to do it. But going to a lunch or a dinner is not just about eating some delicious French meal. It's about to establish relations, to share information, to better understand the world in which we live. And all these meetings have disappeared now, just like almost all the physical encounters. That's true, we still meet from time to time, but we are not many people in the same room. We wear masks, of course. We are far from each other. We keep our distances. And then, of course, just like you, we have a lot of video encounters, a lot of these video meetings, a lot of video meetings every day. Of course, there is a practical side of this because we don't have to move around. We don't have to take our cars and driving from a meeting to another. But there are many, many annoying aspects. Diplomacy, as you know, is the art of compromise. And to make compromises, you have to discuss. Sometimes you have to discuss in a discreet way. You have to have a lot of good personal relationships, informal exchanges. But for a diplomat who arrives today here in Paris or in another capital of the world, it is difficult to make real personal relationships when people hardly see each other anymore. So I hope, like everyone else, that this situation will not last much longer, that we will be able to return to real encounters and to real life, of course. Of course, there will be also things to gain. I think after the coronavirus, for example, I think that we will be able to continue to do sometimes meetings by video now that we have discovered this tool. There is a book written by a French diplomat, Claude Martin. He was a great ambassador. He represented his country mostly in China and Germany. It's a very big book, but it's excellent. I recommend it for all of you who want to become diplomats. The book is called La diplomatie n'est pas un dîner de gala. The diplomacy is not a gala dinner. Last year, he received the Grand Prix des ambassadeurs francophones. It's an association of which I'm the president and I'm proud of it. So the title, as I told you, is Diplomacy is not a gala dinner. And I think this is true because being a diplomat is not just about dinners, lunches, or receptions, as many people could think. Being a diplomat represents a lot of office hours, a lot of work with your colleagues and your partners on sensitive issues, sometimes spending nights without sleep in negotiations. And there is also the need for informal meetings, lunches and dinners, so that things could move forward in the interest of your country, of our countries. So thank you very much again, dear Tova. Thank you everyone for listening to me. And I really hope that the next time we will be able to meet face to face.
First, 3 ambassadors from the high school and 3 ambassadors from the 8th graders. I would like to thank you, Luminitsa. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Emil. Thank you, Lazar Comanescu. Thank you very, very much, the State Secretary, our closer friends, Mrs. Daniela Gitman. And how we say, in Hebrew we say, לשנה הבאה בירושלים לחיי הספינות שבדרך. What I want to say is we will continue to wave the flag. Thank you very much.